Take us out.
Repeat after me. Tazadayak.
Tazadayak. Atha. Yahweh. Vayashar. Vashapat. Yakab. Tazawayak. Tazadak. Adak Yakab. Wa'ab. Awana. Tazamath. Hayana. Pana'afi. Hayah. Shakakwa. Tazarapal. Amaratka. Ma'ad. Wa'aibaka. Ahaba. Tazayar. Anab. Kaya. Wana. Azab. Bakwat. Yakab. Ma'ab. Shakab. Ka'afia. Tazadayak. Kazadak. Awalam. Wathar. Rakab. Amath. Tazar. Wama. Tazawak. Matab. Awab. Nayad. Watab. Waf. Yakab. Shashayam. Tazadak. Awadah. Yakab. Wa'awalam. Abayan. Nayab. Wa'ab. Khaya.
This is the translation. This is Psalm chapter 119. Tazad. Righteous art thou, O Yahweh, and upright are thy judgments. Thy testimonies that thou hast commanded are righteous and very faithful. My zeal hath consumed me, because mine enemies have forgotten thy words. Thy word is very pure, therefore thy servant loveth it. I am small and despised, yet do I not forget thy precepts. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Trouble and anguish have taken hold on me, yet thy commandments are my delights. The righteousness of thy testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. In the name of Yahweh, Shibbi Hawashai, the one from Yud, Aman.
Aman.
All right, shalom. How y'all doing today? The water for the water, whoever put this up here. Y'all see the title of the class. Today we're going to be going into an extensive PowerPoint, especially with everything that's going on in the world, with the Kyries and Kanye West and Dave Chappelle's. So as easy as it is to prove who we are in the Bible, because it's very easy and very simple, we also have to learn how to do this with secular history, extra biblical sources, archaeology. So I compiled a lot of information. Yeshaya can attest to this. I actually took a lot out because we would have been here till the morning. You know what I'm saying? So I took a lot out, which I will be not bringing out all of it, because I like to hide some sources, but I'm bringing out some in some future classes when I break down the tribes, because that's what I will be doing. I'm going to prove who Ephraim is, prove who Judah is, Levi, Benjamin, even going into the Dan. So I'm going to be proving that, just so brothers could understand what I'm doing from here on, right? So, all right. Let's just get straight into it. Let's get Salakia. Let's get the book of Sirach, chapter 39 and verse 3. Salakia, I left my, somebody, let me borrow yours out. I like to read along. The what? Sirach 39 and verse 1. Yeah.
Sirach chapter 39 and verse 1. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecies.
Now, a lot of people, they don't understand this book, and be quite frank. And, through the Most High, through the Spirit breathing in life to the valley of dry bones, we're beginning to wake up. But just as Isaiah chapter 28 gives the blueprint, the blueprint is right here. Somebody that's keeping their mind on the law, okay? And then from you meditating on the law, you will begin to understand what? You will begin to be occupied in the prophecies. And the revelations and the truth of the scriptures will begin to be revealed to you. Continue reading.
Verse 2, He will keep the sayings of the renowned men.
Mm-hmm.
And where subtle parables are, he will be there also.
So in the parables of the scriptures, you'll begin to understand them, right? You'll begin to know what's going on here, what's going on there, so on and so forth. You can understand what Yahushua was talking about. You can link up prophecies, right? Continue reading.
Verse 3, he will seek out the secrets of grave sentences.
See, and just as it says, get that real quick, and what's that, Proverbs 25:2? Read that again, bro.
He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences.
He's going to seek out the secrets of Shalaki, grave sentences. All right, read that real quick.
Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 2.
Go ahead.
It is the glory of the Most High to conceal a thing.
You see, it's the glory of the Most High to conceal something, right? Hide something. That's why it's a secret. He conceals it. Read.
But the honor of kings is to search out a matter.
But the honor of kings is to search out a matter. Meditate in the law. Be occupied in prophecies. Watch and align the things that's going on the earth with the Bible, right? Study archaeology, study history, study science, anthropology, so on and so forth. And all of it will begin to make the Bible come to life. All right, finish that up, Asarek.
He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences.
Go ahead.
And be conversant in dark
parables. So this is why you see, the foolish things of the world confounding the wise. This is why you see people who were once drug dealers and gangbangers and drug addicts and potheads and Muslims and Christians understanding and tapping into this Bible all across the earth, primarily here in Babylon. All right, let's go to Psalms 107 and verse 10. Psalms 107 and verse 10. Baba Kushai.
Psalm chapter 107 and verse 10.
Mm-hmm.
Such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron.
You see, we are these people that are sitting in darkness and we're living in the shadow of death. This is why most of us live in the ghettos of America. And you open up your door, right? And what do you see? You see nothing but death, drug addicts, police brutality, prostitution, people bugging out on the street corners, right? Read it again.
Such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron.
Being bound in affliction of iron. And this is what happened to our people. We were the slaves. We were on the cotton plantations, sugarcane plantations. We were taking out the diamonds and the gold and the silver and the precious minerals from the mines and the mountains of the Caribbean islands, Central, South, North America, all over the place, man. That was us and the tobacco plantations, and they had fetters of iron on us, and we had scars of whips on our back, right? Keep reading.
Verse 11, because they rebelled against the words of God.
And this is why it happened to us, because we rebelled against the words of God. Continue.
And contemned the counsel of the Most High.
Go ahead.
Therefore, he brought down their heart with labor.
And we brought down our heart with labor. We still living in harsh conditions, man. Very harsh conditions that the entire world doesn't give a damn about. Let's send millions of dollars to Ukraine. When we've been living like the freaking blown up cities in Ukraine since forever. You understand? Abandoned buildings and drug addicts and you can name it. It's countless. Continue.
Therefore, he brought down their heart with labor. They fell down, and there was none to help.
And there was none to help, because our only help is going to be who? Yahushua. He's our only help. And through Yahushua, we get to the Father, Yahweh. He's the only one that's going to redeem us, man. He's the reason why we're even to speak the things that we're speaking. How do you think these celebrities know, man? How do you think they know? Because from the labor that our people have been doing on the street corners, right? Let's go to Deuteronomy 32 and verse 20.
Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 20.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very forward generation,
Mm-hmm.
children in whom is no faith.
And you see that today, right? Children in whom there's no faith, a forward generation, man. That's why the Lord had to hide his face from us. But through us repenting, right? As it says in, what is Chronicles 7 and 14? We repent, cry to the Lord, and he's going to heal the land, man. That's what you see happening before us. The Lord is healing our people, man. Continue.
Verse 21.
Yeah.
They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God.
Mm-hmm.
They have provoked me to anger with their vanities. And I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with the foolish nation.
Now we know, I'm not getting into this breakdown, all right? Because this is a whole nother 2-hour class. But we know that the people that this is talking about was happening during the time of Christ. Okay? And these people were the people that were outside. Get a precept real quick, Ezekiel 11 and 15. And the people that he was provoking, the Judeans, because that's what they were, in Jewry, right? The people that lived in the land, he was provoking them to jealousy with the scattered Israelites that weren't circumcised, that were in idolatry, that were in paganism, that had tattoos and had all these crazy things going on. So the Lord also went to them to redeem them. And the people of the land got provoked to jealousy. This is what this is talking about. All right? It's not talking about being provoked to jealousy with a white man or a Chinese man. That's not what it's talking about contextually. All right? That's a whole nother breakdown. Read that real quick for the precept for that.
Ezekiel chapter 11 and verse 15. Son of man, thy brethren, even thy brethren, the men of thy kindred, and all the house of Israel, holy are they unto whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said.
So unto the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, and they're saying this to everybody outside of the land. What are they saying?
Get you far from Yahweh.
Get you far from Yahweh. Yeah?
Unto us is this land given in possession.
Unto us, unto the Judeans, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, is this land given in possession. Not you people who's following Greek customs, not you Scythians or barbarians. None of you people. You can't come back here. You've been cast away. Where's your certificate of circumcision? Because that's what was going on. So they, through the Lord, through Christ, dying on the cross, gave these people another chance to come back. That's all this is talking about. But let's go back to Deuteronomy 32 and let's continue reading.
Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 22.
Mm-hmm.
For a fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell,
Mm-hmm.
and shall consume the earth with her increase,
Mm-hmm.
and set on fire the foundations of the mountain.
And how did this happen? This is 70 AD. So now you're seeing the outline of what's happening. So you see Christ comes. You see Christ is provoking the Judeans through his apostle Paul, right? To jealousy and anger through going to the scattered Israelites round about. Now you see 70 AD happening. Continue.
I will heap mischiefs upon them. I will spend mine arrows upon them.
Mm-hmm.
It shall be burnt with hunger and devoured with burning heat and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them.
He will send the teeth of beasts upon them. So if you read something like the Ketos Wars, what the Romans used was massive dogs, okay, to completely devour the Israelites out of the land, man. This is why we scattered, and we're going to go there, into Africa. Okay? This is why we also got scattered into Europe. Okay? This is what began to happen. This can also apply to when they came to the Americas. Because what did the Spaniards use? They used bull mastiffs. And those are big-ass dogs. You understand? I will never have one of those in my house. I'm scared. Salakia. All right? Keep reading, huh?
I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them, and the poison of serpents of the dust.
Good.
The sword without and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling also with the man of gray hairs.
And this is us getting conquered. Now, through us getting conquered, what happened? Keep reading.
I said I would scatter them into corners.
He scattered us into corners. How? Transatlantic slave trade. That started in 1492 on the island of Hispaniola and the island of Borinquen. And he began to put the Lucayan Indians, Arawak Indians, Taino Indians, and Siboney Indians, and Carib Indians in slave ships and brought them to Seville, Spain. That was the brink and the start of the transatlantic slave trade. And then as time went on, what did he also do? He put people that were in Europe, okay, the Jews and the Israelites of Europe in slave ships. Then eventually made his way down to where? With the start of the Portuguese doing it, the west coast of Africa, and began to scatter us all across the earth. All right? Everybody got that? All right, all praises. Let's go to Zechariah 1:15. Because even though this was prophesied, the Lord did, he said something.
Zechariah chapter 1 and verse 15. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen.
Because even though, the scripture says that the heathen is his sword. Okay? So the Lord uses the nations that are round about us to punish us. He does this. But the Lord did not ordain a white man to cut open the belly of a pregnant woman, take the child out, slam the unborn fetus into a rock, take a kitten, sew it back into the belly, and sit there and laugh and see how long, make wages on how long it's going to take for that cat to come out of your stomach. The Lord didn't ordain that. You understand? The Lord didn't ordain to use our babies as alligator bait. Read.
And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. Because they forwarded the affliction. They took it to another level. You understand? That's what happened. They took this to another level. Let's go to the next precept. Let's go to Jeremiah 7:14. Because these things have to be understood on why did we get scattered? But why did this happen? But what? You got to learn the foundation first. All right? Go ahead. Jeremiah chapter 7 and verse 14. Therefore will I do unto this house, which is called by my name.
No, 17 and 4. Salakia, I did say that. My bad. You know what I want.
Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 4. And thou even thyself shall discontinue from thine heritage. So we were prophesied to discontinue from our heritage, right? I heard I'm not going to say his name, but I heard a Christian apologist, right? Because I study these guys. I heard a Christian apologist say that the Israelites discontinuing from their heritage happened in 70 AD because their heritage is just the land. So them discontinuing from their heritage was them getting kicked out of the land. Get Sirach 17 and 11. Let's just kill that real quick. I'm going to show you what the Israelites' heritage is. All right? Sirach chapter 17 and verse 11. Beside this, he gave them knowledge in the law of life.
And the what?
And the law of life.
And the what?
And the law of life.
And the law of life for what?
For inheritance.
For heritage. So we discontinued from the laws of God. And what happens when we discontinue from the laws of God? The other nations begin to rule over us. We go into captivity. We lose our wealth. See how simple that is? Let's go to the classic. Let's go to Psalms 83. Let's go to the classic. Psalms chapter 83, verse 1.
Psalms chapter 83 and verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. So our enemies made a tumult, okay? And they're lifting up they're proud, okay? Read. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people,
Mhm.
consulted against thy hidden ones.
And they take crafty counsel against us. To this day. That's why you go to the suburbs, it's organic and, you know, just apple picking. And you go to the ghetto, there's barely any trees. All right. And there's nothing but genetically modified organisms. There's way more white lines in the sky. There's our neighborhoods are drug infested. The police hunt us down. They don't protect the neighborhood. They protect their own governmental society, man. They don't protect the people. Protect and serve. Protect and serve who? Shaitan. That's who you protect and serve. All right? Keep reading.
They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
Now this is key. That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. This is why they want you to call yourself Black, Hispanic, Native American, African American, Negro, Puerto Rican, Mexican, Cherokee, Blackfoot. They want you to be under all these names, but what? But Israel. This is how you know what Kanye West did had nothing to do with George Floyd. They don't care because Kanye West has said things that were anti-Black, quote unquote, for years. Kanye West, he had a MAGA hat on. Kanye West said slavery was a choice. He said things that were quote unquote anti-Black. But when he said, yeah, the Jews are Black, huh? You can't say that. When Kyrie just posted a damn DVD, he posted a DVD. That's all he did. He posted a DVD, and what happens? Because of the content on what's in the DVD, which is an attempt to prove who the children of Israel are. And it points to us. Now it's a problem. Why? Because the name of Israel is supposed to be no more in remembrance. They don't want you to utter that name. You could be a Muslim. You could be NOI. They want you to be a Christian. Because Christianity is slavery. Right? They want you to be a Christian. But as soon as you say, I am an Israelite, you're a heretic, you're a hater, you're disgusting. Prove this and prove that and prove this and DNA test this. But they don't say that to the Jewish man. When he comes and says, in Israel. I don't know why. Why does he talk like that? That's another mystery. We gotta dive in. Why does the Jewish man talk? I don't know. That's a mystery, man. That and how does he keep the hat on his head? That little small hat. These are mysteries, man. Gotta be somewhere in the scriptures. All right, let's go to Luke 21 and 20. Mysteries, man.
Luke chapter 21 and verse 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies.
And this is 70 AD, right? Read.
Then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. Now
let's go to Micah 4 and 10. Let's go to Micah 4 and 10, right? Get a little bit more understanding, and then we're going to dive into the PowerPoint.
This is Micah chapter 4 and verse 10. Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city. So 70
AD. They went forth where? They went forth out of the city. Okay, read.
And thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon.
And thou shalt dwell in the field. What is that field? That same field is that wilderness in Revelation 12, which is where? Africa. And then going into the west coast of Africa. This is where they dwell. All right? Read.
And thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon.
And then we shall go to Babylon, which is where? America. So from us coming out of the city in 70 AD, going into the interiors of Africa, forming the Abyssinian empires, and forming all of these different places, right, in Sudan, and then continuing to go where? Continuing to go west. Then eventually going into the Mali, the Songhai, Ghana, and forming a lot of these empires here, right? And helping build these empires, because there was already empires there. But we began to help build and fuel these empires with our trade and with our commerce and with our skills, as we do in every empire, right? Finish that up.
There shalt thou be delivered.
And in Babylon, we're going to be delivered. In America. Read.
There Yahweh shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies.
And Yahweh is going to redeem us from the devil that the Bible speaks of. All right, let's go to Zephaniah 3 and 10.
Zephaniah chapter 3 and verse 10.
Mm-hmm.
From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia.
From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, right? Which is where? This is the Nile River. Okay? So beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, what?
From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring mine offering. So
this is what? Showing that we were going to be on the other side of the Nile River, which is eventually going to land you where? On the west coast of Africa. Very simple. These things are not hard to understand, right? Now let's get Deuteronomy 33 and 17. I know I'm probably flying through these precepts, right? Because I want to get to this PowerPoint, and then we're going to take our time there, all right? But these are foundational precepts to understand how we got to the west coast of Africa, how we got kicked out of the land, how we got into Europe, and I'm going to start explaining how we got into the Americas. These are all foundational precepts. This is Israelite 101, right? You at camp, but how you bring this out? Let me get Zephaniah, let me get this, let me get that. And you begin to teach through the scriptures how we got there. All right, all praises. Let's go to what I said, Deuteronomy? Yeah, read that.
Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 17.
Go ahead.
His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth.
With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. Right? And who was going to do it?
They are the 10,000s of Ephraim. And they are the thousands of Manasseh.
The 10,000s of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. Right? So this is what's said was going to happen. Now, where's the end of the earth? These are things you got to ask yourself. All right? Things you got to ask yourself. Let's go to Hosea 9 and 17. Hosea chapter 9 and 17.
Hosea chapter 9 and verse 17. My God will cast them away because they did not hearken unto him. And they shall be wanderers among the nations.
They shall be what?
They shall be wanderers among the nations.
See, the northern kingdom was to be wanderers among the nations. Okay? So the northern kingdom was scattered as well in a variety of places, but the bulk was right here in the Americas. You know what I want now? I need a pop. Let's go to the classic.
Second Ezra chapter 13 and verse 39. Whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him.
Go ahead.
Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive. When
this happened, Abadi? See if y'all remember this. Israelite 101, man. This ain't deep. What year did this happen? Approximately. Between 725 and 722 BCE. That's when it happened. When they began to go in and they began to raid the northern kingdom of Israel. All right? After the split, which is 1 Kings chapter 12, all right? This is what you begin to see, all right? This is between 725 and 722 BCE. That's when this began to happen. All right, read.
And he carried them over the waters, so they came into another land.
And he carried them over the waters, over the rivers, and we went into another land. Right? You can see that they placed us in the city of the Medes and things of that nature. All right? Read out.
But they took this counsel among themselves.
Which is in 2 Kings 17, right? 2 Kings 17, you'll see that. Read.
That they will leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Now, they were going to go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, meaning there's no kingdoms there. There's no empires here. Okay? There was already empires and kingdoms in China, in Africa, in Europe. Those things already existed. Not in America. Read.
Verse 42, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
And this is why Native Americans had fringes and shields of Davids, and they had a mimic of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Found with certain books and certain scrolls and certain archaeology that shouldn't be over here. Like, why is that there? Why does he have Hebrew writings? Why are they doing this? Right. Continue.
Verse 43. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go. So through that country there was a great way to go. So it was a long time to get to that location where they were going to settle and begin to build their empires and their civilization. Continue. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth. Arsareth. Now, Arsareth is not a name of a place. Arsareth is the Greek transliteration of meaning another land in Hebrew. That's what it is. Another land. Okay? That's all it is. Jump down just to prove a quick point to verse 48. Verse 48? But those that be left behind. See, that shows you not all of the northern kingdom came to America, because there were some left behind. Okay? Read. But those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders. Are they that are found within the borders. And what borders Israel? You got Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, and eventually beginning to spread into further parts of the world. Okay? Let's go to one more and we're going to dive into it. Let's go to Jeremiah 33 and 24. Jeremiah 33 and 24. Jeremiah chapter 33 and verse 24. Considerest thou not what this people have spoken, saying, the two families which Yahweh hath chosen, he hath even cast them off. You see, this is what the nations are saying. The two families that the Lord chose, he cast them off. Man, he ain't dealing with them. He don't love these people no more. Read. Thus they have despised my people. And because of this, the other nations are despising us. Okay? That they should be no more a nation before them. And now we're not a nation before them. But this is why they're beginning to tremble and be scared. Because we're waking up to who we are. And we're opening up not just the scriptures, which is the most important. We're proving who we are through the history you gave us. Through the books that cost you, that you're making cost thousands of dollars. Well, guess what? We got a lot of them. Okay? We got a whole lot. All right? My rib gets mad sometimes when I buy books. So lucky. Like, you bought that? How much was it? So lucky. Quick joke. All right, let's go to real quick before we get into. Matter of fact, now we can go into the PowerPoint. We're gonna go into the PowerPoint. Make it, big. Pause.
So lucky. All right. So obviously you see the title. Who are the Israelites? Right? So we're going to prove who the Israelites are today. All right? Once again, for the brothers in the school, y'all can put y'all pens and pads down. I'm going to send all of y'all to PowerPoint. Just lock in. All right? Next slide. You see, this is the table of contents. So this is what we're going to go through. And everybody clap it up for Yeshaya, man. He did this for me. You know what I'm saying? He did this for me. I edited it up a little bit, make it pretty. Added a couple more slides, you know, because he did a lot. My man's did a lot. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to be going into Israelites in antiquity. And that's gonna be a little bit shorter, because what we're gonna do is I'm gonna bring this out even more in the future. All right. Then we're gonna do medieval Jews of Europe. We're gonna be Jews of West Africa, Israelites in Pre-Columbian America, and Israelites in slavery. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. Continue. Next slide. All right, I got to do the copyright. All right, because last time I was up here, and I'm gonna read it. The disclaimer: copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of Copyright Act 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Now I gotta bring this out because last class, I was doing something, they shut the YouTube down in the middle of the class. All right. So Esau, I'm beating you to it. All right. Next slide. Beating you to it, Esau. I gotta read that, Yeshaya.
This is from William Casey, the CIA director.
I want y'all to hear this. I'm doing this in the beginning so y'all can understand why the knowledge that I'm going to bring out is not taught in the forefront. Because the only way to control the earth is to control who? The minds of the chosen. It's the only way. Read.
This is the first staff meeting they ever created, this organization. He immediately said, we'll know our disinformation program is complete. Everything the American public believes is false.
You see that? So the CIA said, we know our disinformation program will be complete when everything the American public believes is false. I didn't write that quote. I didn't make that up, because there is a quote unquote conspiracy, an agenda to blind the minds of millions of people, primarily the Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans of Negro and Indian descent. They don't want you to know who you are, because when you know who you are, you know you have a duty in this earth. When you know you're a king and you are chosen by the Heavenly Father, the creator and grand architect of this universe, you know I'm not just a nigga in a spick. I'm not just supposed to be getting high and selling drugs. I'm supposed to do more with my life, because God designed me like this. Next slide. This is the GOAT right here, John D. Rockefeller. He the GOAT, literally a GOAT. Baphomet. Read that out.
This is from John D. Rockefeller, created the General Education Board in 1903 to dispense the Rockefeller funds of education. He said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers.
So he don't want a nation of thinkers. He want a nation of workers. This is why people are programmed to just go and work and pay your bills and work and pay your bills. And out of nowhere, 20 years pass by and you're like, what did I do with my life? What did I do? It just vanished. Next slide out.
This is from Zygmunt Brzezinski in 1972.
Shortly, the public will be unable to reason or think for themselves. They'll only be able to parrot the information they've been given on the previous night's news.
So you see, this is all psyops. This is social engineering. You're only going to parrot what you see on the previous night's news. This is what's going on in the world, all right? And people don't realize this. I'm reading from the scholars. All right, shalom. Shalom. Lord be with you, brother. Lord be with you. Bless your Christian heart. Okay? Next slide.
This is from Carter G. Woodson in 1933, The Miseducation of the Negro. As another has well said, to handicap a student by teaching him that his blackface is a curse and that his struggle to change his condition is hopeless is the worst sort of lynching.
Mm-hmm.
It kills one's aspirations and dooms him to vagabondage and crime.
You see that? So the damaging of the mind leads to what? Vagabondage and crime. Finish that up.
It is strange then that the friends of truth and the promoters of freedom have not risen up against the present propaganda in the schools and crushed it. This crusade is much more important than the anti-lynching movement, because there would be no lynching if it did not start in the schoolroom.
You see, there will be no lynching if it didn't start in the schoolroom, in the classrooms. Because just as they took Native Americans and created what? Boarding schools, and destroyed them and raped them and cut their hair and made them change their language and made them say, your name is not this, your name is that. And then took these kids and put them in orphanage. That's where the orphanage home started, with Native Americans. Robbing Native American children from their homes and putting them in orphanage. This is the history of America. And this is how we lost our heritage, man. This was all crafty counsel. You don't think the slaves knew they were Israelites? They knew. They ain't gonna tell you, but I'm gonna show you that they knew, because we're gonna get into it. You understand? Next slide. Oh, matter of fact, it's all good. Next slide. So now we in the Israelites in antiquity. So now what we have to understand is who is the forefathers of the Israelites, which is the lineage of Shem. Okay? And who was Shem? How did Shem look? Where did Shem dwell? We got to understand these things. All right? Let's go to Genesis real quick. Genesis 12. 12:1, I believe it is, that right?
Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1.
Yeah.
Now Yahweh had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. So
Abraham left the land that he was originally at. And that's when he began to go into the quote unquote land of Canaan. All right? Is that it on that? Now go to Joshua. Last chapter. You know what I want? You know exactly what I want. What's that? Chapter 24 and 2?
Joshua chapter 24 and verse 2.
Yeah.
And Joshua said unto all the people, thus saith Yahweh, power of Israel, your fathers dwell on the other side of the flood in old times.
So your fathers, Abraham's fathers, dwelt on the other side of the flood, meaning the other side of the river. Go ahead.
Your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods.
Now you will see that in the book of Genesis, this will be the land of Ur, which was what? This is ancient Sumeria, the cradle of civilization, not Egypt. Ancient Sumeria is the cradle of civilization, which is post-diluvian, which means after the flood. It began right there in Sumeria, between the rivers. Ancient Mesopotamia, Meso meaning in the middle. All right? In the middle of the rivers. Okay? Tigris, Euphrates. That's where civilization started. That's where our people come from. Khan? Read that source.
You have the sources at the bottom of the page, so I'll read from the top.
You got it?
Who were the Sumerians and where did they come from? According to the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, the descendants of Shem, the Arphaxidites, settled in Mesopotamian region south of the Tower of Babel, known as Chaldea. Further evidence that Shem's descendants settled northern Mesopotamia is found in Sumerian cuneiform writing. The cuneiform writers use the word Shumer, not Sumer.
So, in the cuneiform, it was Shumer, not Sumer. Read.
To identify the region. Moreover, in accordance with the Sumerian phonetic law of admissibility, final consonants were not pronounced in speech.
So final consonants in cuneiform were not pronounced in speech. Okay, this is very important to understand. Read.
This means that the Sumerians most likely pronounced Shumer as Shum.
So it wasn't Shumer, it was Shum. Read.
Also, the vowels and U are interchanged in Sumerian and Hebrew languages.
So the E and the U are interchangeable in the Hebrew languages. This is what the scholars are saying, right? Read.
Respectively. This means that the Sumerian word Shum becomes Shem when adopted into the Hebrew language.
So Sumeria or Sumeria or Shem is named after our forefathers. So, and this proves what the Bible is saying, because that's where Abraham came from. Finish it up.
It seems appropriate that the early Sumerians would name their land after their great forefather Shem.
Yeah, read the source.
The source is from The Truth and Science by David Collingridge on page 12.
On page, all right. Now, Barak, you can bring out your quick precept just to prove it a little bit more.
This is Genesis chapter 11 and verse 28. Salat, verse 27. These are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot, and Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees.
Now you see that's ancient Sumeria. Come. Next slide.
This source is from Our Common African Genesis, 2nd edition, page 60 by Larry West. He gives an account by saying their skin was dark, the hair short and thick, the lips strong. Nobody knows their origins and exactness and are not agreed on a name to call them, some terming them Cushites, others Hamites, which is reference of 20. H.G. Wells observed the following about the Akkadians and the Sumerians.
So this is an account of the Akkadians and Sumerians, and they're saying they're dark, short hair, and thick hair, with strong lips. Salakia. Keep reading.
Then arose at last a great leader among the Semites, which would be the Akkadians, Sargon, in 2750 BC, who united them and not only conquered the Sumerians, but though the Semites conquered and gave a king to the Sumerian cities, it was the Sumerian civilization that prevailed over the simpler Semitic culture. The newcomers learned the Sumerian writing and the Sumerian language, and they set up no Semitic writing of their own.
So you see that? It's very simple. Next slide. It's very simple. Our ancestors on the other side of the flood, the river, the Sumerians, the Chaldeans, they were dark-skinned. Read.
The first source is from Retake Your Fame, Black Contribution of World Civilization by Elmer von Flescher. He says, blacks also built terrace pyramids, similar to Sumerian ziggurats. The earliest Sumerians were dark-skinned.
They were what?
Dark-skinned.
The earliest Sumerians were dark-skinned. Read. What's the next one?
This is the second source from Pirk de Eliezer.
This is the Midrash. All right? You like Yawasap. You read the I read everything, Salakia. I read the Talmud. I study my enemies. All right? Yeah.
he said, he specially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark and comely.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave them the habitable earth.
You see, the Jewish know this. They read this literature. But they don't tell you this. I'm going to read it, right? He especially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark and comely. Next slide. They don't want you to know these things. This is in the Midrash. They read this, right? They abstain that more than the damn Torah, man. That and the Talmud.
They said their sages wrote that.
Right. Read.
The next source is Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson. Traces of these early men were found as a result of excavation near Jerusalem in 1928, and later in caves at Mount Carmel, due to excavators assigned to them the name the Tufians, and they remain to this day the greatest riddle in archaeology. Even Sir Arthur Keith agrees that they are clearly Negroid protagonists.
They are clearly Negroid. Read.
With wide faces, flat noses, and long, large heads.
That's disrespectful. Slakia, yeah, keep reading.
So Arthur goes on to say that these early Palestinian blacks.
These what?
Early Palestinian blacks.
Go ahead.
May have been the ancestors of the Semites and Arabs of biblical times.
Wow.
I could stop here. I could be like, class over. Shalom. Y'all boss and y'all. I could stop right here. But we're going to keep going. When I tell you the sources is just going to pile up and pile up and pile up. Go ahead.
So this is a picture, and the source is from Mari, North and West Sumer.
This is ancient Iraq. Okay? Now, look at that painting. You can't tell me that, well, you know, it got darker over time. And they got white robes on. Those don't look like white people to me. These are ancient Sumerians. Okay? Okay? Next slide. Look at that. A priest guiding a sacrificial bull. They didn't just pop up, we're just going to sacrifice. The ancient line of our fathers were sacrificing. There was a priesthood. This is why Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek, because there was a priesthood before the Levitical line. Right, look at the modern location, modern Tel Hari, Iraq. Look at the year, 1240 to 1870 BC. In the same location, Mari. This is Iraq. That is it. Look at that dude. He looked like my grandfather. Salakia. He really does, though. Next slide. Now look at this, even more. A Kissite on the left-hand side, right? That's what they call a bust. Okay, that's a Kissite, which is also the ancient Sumeria. Now look at the Chaldean close-up. I was laughing at this last night when I went through it again. That looked like Panay when he had braids, the one on the right. That's a close-up of a Chaldean. Okay? This is archaeology. I don't make this stuff. Next slide. Now look at this. This is also an ancient Sumerian bust. Look at that dude, man. Looking like Kadash over here. You just wish your beard was that big. Salakia. You know what I'm saying? Next slide. Now this, look at the year. From 1539 to 1292 BC, right? The 18th dynasty. Barak, what was happening in the 18th dynasty? Slavery in Egypt. And they're depicting the slaves. And what? This is the vineyard. Who was known to have vineyards, to make wine? Israelites were. Where's the white people here? I don't see them. Look at the tomb. That's in Thebes. I didn't paint this. I didn't make this up. I didn't just say, let me make some shit up that happened in the tomb of Nakak at Thebes, the 18th. I didn't do that. I don't have enough power to do that. You understand? Next slide. Now look, Hebrews making mud bricks, okay? Mud bricks was only used in certain dynasties in the Middle Kingdom. Mud bricks is also quoted in the book of Exodus. You got that precept? Read the precept, right? This shows you that the Bible is valid because somebody during the time of Greece, which when they say a lot of this was written, it was more written during the time of Greece. This is what these people say. They won't know that mud bricks was being used during these dynasties that we were in captivity. Doesn't make sense. Read that.
This is Exodus chapter 5 and 7. It says, you shall no more give the people straw to make brick. As heretofore, let them go and gather straw for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the tail of the bricks, which they did make heretofore, you shall lay upon them. You shall not diminish aught thereof, for they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God.
So you see that? Archaeology lining up with the Bible. You can't make this up. You can't make this stuff up. Now it's evident. You see it. You see the sources on the right-hand side, the Oxford history of the biblical world. You see the pictorial history of the Jewish people, even though we ain't ish, right? It's very simple. You can't make this stuff up. You see the tomb that it was found in, also in Thebes. All right, next slide. Now this, right? Read that in the bottom. Huh?
This is the source from the southwest palace of Tilgath-Pileser III at Nimrud. Pileser, Salaki.
Mm-hmm.
From 730 to 727 BCE in the British Museum.
Now this is when they carried away who? The Northern Kingdom. Okay, more archaeology. This is proof of what's going on in the Bible. Right here. You understand? You see them fringes. You see them garments on the corners. Next slide.
It's a close-up of the 6'5" tall black obelisk of Shalmaneser III.
So you see, this is just another one, right? The black obelisk. Okay. You see that? Evidence. You see fringes. You know what I'm saying? You see a damn coon bowing down. Salakia. Man, Jehu, man. Bowing down. Next slide. Now, this is the Lachish reliefs. We're going to get into this a little bit more in the following slides. This is Judeans, right? Now, on the left-hand side, you see them laying down, dead bodies, right? Do me a favor, Abayak, Baba Kushak, can you zoom in a little bit to the left-hand side? If you can. If you can't, it's all good. Just let me know if you can or you can't. Well, if you look at the left-hand side, right, I want you to look at their hair texture. You see the salaki, you see the naps. You understand? That's when you see hair of wool. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, this is them carrying them away with their sackcloth on. That's why there's no fringes, because they have undergarments, sackcloth on. Go back, You see them on the right-hand side, right? Sackcloth is the reason why they're not wearing fringes, okay? And they're being carried away into captivity. You see that? Look at their hair as well.
This is Sennacherib, right?
Yes. That's the Lachish reliefs. You understand that? Next slide. What's the precept for that? Just so we could quote it.
This is 2 Chronicles chapter 32 and verse 9.
Go ahead.
After this did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish and all his power with him unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, and unto all Judah that were at Jerusalem.
You can't make this up. Now look at this one. The Illustrated Library of the World and Its People, volume Israel and Turkey, right? Written in 1966 to 1968. This is page 94. Exiled Israelite musicians. The same way we're musicians now, we were back then in captivity. Look at those men. Nice big braids on them. You understand that? This is our people, Ak. Look at the fringes on the bottom of the garment. This is our people, Ak, with the nice girdle. Next slide. That's a Jewish book printed in Jerusalem. Views of the Biblical World. This is volume 3, International Publishing Corporation in Jerusalem. This is in 1960, page 110. Dead Israelites and Israelite exiles. Now you see on the left-hand side, you see the artifact. On the right-hand side, it's a zoom in of the artifact. Look at the dead Israelites. Look at them. Where's a Jewish man? I am a rabbi of Green, in Brooklyn. In Kyrie, you have to apologize because you hurt our people. And in 1942 to shut the hell up, bro. Cut it out. What is the evidence that you're printing? You made this. I didn't make this. You made this. Next slide. Now, this is in Dura Europa, right? A synagogue, the oldest synagogue in the world, by the way, today. In Dura Europa in Syria. Now, look at this. Is Moses and the Hebrews crossing the Red Sea. Where's the white people there? They're the same people same color as the people that's drowning in the sea. Next slide. Now you see this book, right? This is the Oxford Encyclopedia of Archaeology in the Near East, right? This is the source that we're about to read. Next slide. Excuse me. Now you see that same thing, the Lachish, right? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, okay? Because this was the southern kingdom, all right? Now go to the next slide. We're going to zoom into that page, right? This is on page 321. Read that out.
It says Starkey uncovered a mass burial that scattered this articulated skeletons of about 1,500 individuals.
So this is about 1,500 individuals of something that they dug up that is of the conquering that happened with Lachish. Read.
Of a few adjoining caves that may be associated with the Assyrian attack.
Mm-hmm.
D. L. Ritson in 1939 has studied 695 skulls belonging to men, women, and children.
Go ahead. 3
had been trepanned. Curiously, the cornea bear a close racial resemblance to the contemporary population of Egypt.
So the skulls resembled Negroes. Okay? That's what it resembled. So the people that were being taken from Lachish by Sennacherib, we just read that in the scriptures, resembled Negroes. Not just the reliefs, the actual skulls that they dug up. You understand that? I'm not making this up. This is in their book. Next slide. Now, I put this in here just for a little bit of fun. Yeah, you know what to do.
This is Ruddy.
Oh, read the source real quick.
Pictorial Bible Dictionary.
By Zondervan.
By the Zondervan.
Shout out to Zondervan. Go ahead.
It's Ruddy. A word used to refer to a red or fair complexion in contrast to the dark skin of the Hebrews.
In contrast to the dark skin of the Hebrews. I just threw this in there just to be funny. Why not? Oop. Next slide.
The first source, the Jew or Negro, being a study of the Jewish ancestry from an impartial standpoint, is from Arthur Talmadge Abernethy on page 9. The original Jews, therefore, short, dark people of the long-headed type. The original Jew and Negro were then descended from the same father.
Headshot. Okay.
This is the second source, of Book 5, 1 through 13 of the Histories by Tacitus. Many assure us that the Jews are descended from those Ethiopians who were driven by fear and hatred to emigrate from their home country when Caiaphas was king.
You see that? So, you see the source? Yeah, the Jews and the Negroes had to come from the same father. Yeah, the Jews were Ethiopians, just meaning dark skin, because that's all Ethiopia means. Dark skin. You see that? Next slide. That's when you gotta give them the tight lip. Go ahead.
Now this is medieval Jews.
Now we're going into this is probably my favorite section of the slides. The medieval Jews of Europe. My favorite section, because this right here ruffles a lot of feathers. What do you mean, black Jews in Europe? What do you mean this? And just sit down, take your pen and your pad out, and come to class, brother. You'll learn. I'll probably give you some books for free. Probably not. It's a lot of people. But now read that.
The first source is Literature and Science by Monica Schmitz-Emmons on page 149. She says, ethnological and popular literature repeatedly refer to Jews as the Negroes of Europe.
The Negroes of Europe. Go ahead.
As swarthy, African, mulatto, Jewish, Negroid, and as members of a mongrel, dark-skinned race.
Come on, man. Read the next one, huh? Come on, man.
The next source is by Edomite, by the way. History in Black by Yaakov Shavitz. On page 182. He said in medieval literature.
Y'all know what that
is. I hope y'all know what age that is.
Who? Medieval? The Dark Ages.
In medieval literature, a theory prevailed in which the Jews were part of the black race.
It ain't a theory, Salakia. Go ahead.
Or were at least dark-skinned.
You see that? Next slide. We're going to keep getting into it, man. We're going to keep getting into it. We're going to bang these dudes in the head. Now look at the right side. That's Duke Frederick VII of Saxony. Look at that. That's a coin. That is not, look at that dude, bro. Come on, that's Frederick. Yeah. He said Frederick Douglass. You childish. You see that?
We created the first form of currency, by the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So in general, I'm gonna read the source first. It's Medieval Identity Machines by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen. He's also a Jew.
Cohen.
Page 277. In general, however, Saracens and Jews were the groups most acceptable to representation as swarthy.
Swarthy. Swarthy, which means dark skin. All right? Read.
Air quotes, Ethiopian or black skinned, making such darkness a signifier of race.
You see that? So this is another source. Jews were the groups most acceptable to representation as niggas. That's what they should have just said. Niggas. Black people. They should have just said it, because that's what you want to say on a low. Next source.
Source of Black Jews in Africa and America by Tudor Parfit from page 16.
One of y'all got this book. I don't know which one of y'all got my book, but one of y'all got this book because it's missing. I was glad I had pictures of it on my phone that I just found randomly, and I was like, ooh, one of y'all got my book, man. I'm gonna find it. Yeah.
Sefer Yosef al-Makena, which boasts that we Jews are from a clean and white seed, therefore our faces are black. But
You hear that? This, because a lot of people like to go into certain quotes of Jews, and when they hear pure, clean, and white seed, white meaning pure. It's an idiom. You see that? Get that in Lamentations 4. Let me prove my point. Because it's right in Lamentations 4. I believe verse 4. Let me hear it, and I know if it's that.
Lamentations chapter 4, verse 4.
Yeah.
The tongue of the suckling child.
Nah, next verse. Is it verse 5? Let me see.
7.
verse 7.
Yeah.
Verse 7. The Nazarites were purer than snow.
The Nazarites are purer than snow. Watch this. Keep reading. You see that? They're white. Okay, keep reading.
They were whiter than milk.
They were whiter than milk. That means they're white, right? Keep reading.
They were more ruddy in body than rubies.
You see that? More ruddy in body than rubies. Okay. Keep reading.
Their polishing was of sapphire.
Go ahead.
Their visage.
Their what?
Their visage.
Their what?
Their visage.
Their face. Go ahead.
Is blacker than a coal.
Then what?
Than a coal.
It's blacker than a coal. So you see, what the previous verse was signifying was the purity of the Nazarites. That's it. It's all about context. It's all about Hebrew idioms. So that the same thing is happening right here in this source. All right? Now back it up. Yeah, no, start from the top again from that verse. I mean, from that source. Slide.
Sefer Yosef ha-Makena, which boasts that we Jews are from a clean and white good seed. Therefore, our faces are black.
So that we're from a clean and white seed, meaning we're from the pure bloodline. That's what he's expressing. That's why he says, therefore, our faces are black. We're dark skinned. Now watch what he says here. Read.
But you from the red seed of menstruation.
But you, he's talking to the fake Jews. He said, but you are from the red seed of menstruation. Go ahead.
Therefore, your visages are pale and red.
He said, therefore, you pale and red, man. You understand this?
From
Go ahead.
the 13th century Sephardic perspective.
This is from the 13th century Sephardic perspective, because the real Sephardic Jews were black. Okay? That's what people have to understand. Next one.
Next source is from Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 4, the 1910 edition, on page 93.
Go ahead.
The expression blue blood is from the Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
The nobles of Castile claim to be free from all admixture.
So they claim to be free from all admixture, right? Go ahead.
With the darker blood of Moors or Jews.
Go ahead.
A proof being supposed to lie in the blue veins that show in their fairer skin.
You see that? So they were proving that they were of what? They were clean with mixing with other people. All right? The more and more sources we bring up, you're going to be like, oh, It's only going to get deeper. Next source.
This is from Shakespeare and the Jews by James Shapiro.
Whoa, Shakespeare and the Jews. Right? Let me teach you something. Sometimes when you walk in a library or you walk in a bookstore or even Goodwill, because believe it or not, I find a lot of good books in Goodwill. You know, every time I drive by Goodwill, I do Tokyo Drift. I go into there, my rib be like, yeah, I'm looking for a book. And I be finding stuff. And they be like $5. And in my head, I'm like, you don't know what this is worth. Telling you, do it. And you'll look at a book and it'll be like ancient history of Europe. And you'll walk past it because you'll see some white lady on it. Some you'll see some white dude on it, right? You'll be like, whatever. Open the book up, Ak. I guarantee you're gonna find something. You're gonna be like, huh? This is me. I'm telling you. Read that.
This is the accumulated experience of over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that Jews were black.
Including the belief that Jews were black. Yeah?
Needed to be qualified. When William Bremerton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635.
In Amsterdam, all right, where they're getting high. Yeah? Well, now, it's like it, yeah.
He noted that the Jewish men are most black and insatiably given unto women.
Mm-hmm.
Drawn here on contemporary prejudices linking blackness and licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690, he also paid a visit to the synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men and indistinct in their reasonings as gypsies.
As gypsies. I want you to remember this, because all the sources I'm going to bring out today is going to tie in with a bunch of sources I'm going to bring out in the future. Okay? Continue.
By the end of the 17th century, works like the English translation of the Francis Maximilian, Missions a New Voyage to Italy, make clear that it is a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. This mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews.
The Portuguese Jews. The Sephardic Jews. Remember that. Look, Abadia like, ooh, because Abadia's father's from Portugal. And that's a black man. You see that? Continue.
Who, marrying always among one another.
We just read that in the previous source. They always marry the one among each other. Why? Because they didn't want to look like the people around them. If you actually study it and read more. You understand that? Right. Go ahead.
Begat children like themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions.
Even in the northern regions. Continue.
But the Jews who are originally of Germany.
But those damn Amalekites. Yeah.
Those, for example, I have seen at Prague, are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Even Manasseh ben Israel, in his plea for the readmission of the Jews into England, offered evidence that some of the Jews in distant lands differed racially.
You see that? Showing you the difference here. Okay? Next source. Don't worry, y'all gonna get it. Just, I know y'all probably got questions. Y'all gonna get the whole PowerPoint, so don't worry. Yeah.
The first source is Mark of Distinctions, Christian Perceptions of Jews in the High Middle Ages by Irvin M. Resnick. He says, regardless of whether only Jewish men or both men and women were understood to be dark complexioned in medieval Christian perception, it remains to determine why a dark skin color should be assigned to Jews at all.
Mm-hmm.
For theologians, the link between dark or black skin and the blackness of sin seems assured.
Devils. Yeah.
Medieval scholastic natural philosophers, however, sought causes rooted in nature. An investigation into these causes could be divided according to the medical theory of the natural, non-natural, and contranatural influences on the body.
Mm-hmm.
For our purposes, however, it would be simpler to divide our discussion into two: external or internal influences upon skin color.
Now, a lot of this is the beginning of what will be known later in history during this time will be the Hamitic hypothesis. Okay, we're not going to get into that. Also, future classes. But they were trying to figure out and come up with theories on why the Jews were black. This is why all of this is happening. Okay, continue. Next source.
Next source is the Sources of the Pentateuch by Samuel C. Bartlett on page 118,
Mm-hmm.
which says, thus the black color is found not only in individuals, as the black Jews of Portugal,
Come on.
but in tribes, as the Bakharis on the Red Sea,
Mm-hmm.
whose hair and character are perfectly Semitic,
Perfectly Semitic. Go ahead.
and the white color in the brutalized descendants of certain exiled Irish of Ulster,
Exiled. Because who was ruling? Continue.
whose features are almost of the African type.
You see this? Next. Now look at the right real quick. All right. See that coin? That Klev Vladimir the First. That's Russia. Look at him. He got braids hanging down, all that. That's a nigga. All right. Read that source out.
This is the Mediterranean race Italian G. Surgeon from 1901.
Go ahead.
It's the study of the European people called the early settlers of Europe, which would be the Euro-Africans.
Which will be the what?
Euro-Africans.
Okay. Next slide.
This is the history, the destruction of the city and temple of Jerusalem, and the ruin and dispersion of the Jewish nation by Thomas Brown on page 180.
Go ahead.
The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descendant from the tribe of Judah.
Say it again.
The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descendants from the tribe of Judah.
From the tribe of Judah. Okay. Good.
In consequence of this supposed superiority, they have not till lately married or in any way incorporated with their brethren of other nations.
They said we ain't marrying none of y'all. Go ahead.
They had separate synagogues.
Mm-hmm.
And if a Portuguese Jew, even in England or Holland,
Even in England or Holland. So where did the Jews of England come from? Portugal and Spain. Good.
married a German Jewish.
So if they marry one of them Amalekites, okay, nasty little things, good.
He was immediately expelled from the synagogue.
He was expelled from the synagogue. This is what was going on in Europe, okay?
I don't know the laws of the intercourse.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot here.
I don't know the law.
Yeah. Hey, man. Next slide. Next slide. Go ahead, my good brother.
This is the source from the History of the Jews by Gretz Henrich from 1817 to 1891, Locke Philip from 1841 to 1923, and Louis Bella, 1853 on page 389, which is three accountants of three different individuals.
Right.
The northern coast of Africa and the inhabitable regions inland were full of Jews of Spanish descent.
They were what?
Full of Jews of Spanish descent.
Now, they were full of Jews of Spanish descent, which we read the Jews of Spanish descent were what? Dark skin. Yeah.
From the northern coast of Africa, so y'all remember that.
Mm-hmm.
They had congregated there in great numbers during the century from the persecution of 1391 to their total expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
From Safi, which is the Safi, the most southwestern town of Morocco,
Right? Go ahead.
to Tripoli in the
Mhm.
northeast, there were many communities of varying numbers speaking the Spanish language.
Go ahead.
Though mostly hated,
Go ahead.
arbitrarily treated, and often compelled by petty barbarian tyrants and the uncivilized, degenerate Moorish population to wear disgraceful costume, yet prominent Jews found opportunities to distinguish themselves,
Mhm.
to rise to high honors and acquire widespread influence.
So if these black Jews were in Europe and being despised, who was despising them? Dusty Hamites, man. Go ahead. Next slide. Now, this is a book. I love this book. And I'm going to bring this out in the future as well. And we're going to get into some things. Because the pirates was Israelites. Okay? And it actually goes into a specific tribe. Okay? Goes into a specific tribe. Okay? Read that. The whole thing. Just read the whole thing. Why not?
Charles' treatments of Jews.
Oh, read the source.
It's called The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean.
The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. Go ahead.
How a generation of swashbuckling Jews carved out an empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge.
Mm-hmm.
By Edward Chrysler.
Revenge. Revenge from what? The expulsion of the Jews of Europe. Go ahead.
Charles' treatment of Jews in his realm was consistent with the tolerance he expressed in the Declaration of Breda. London's Jews, no longer having to disguise themselves or hide their wealth, gathered each Sabbath in the rickety first floor synagogue in Church Lane. Their place in society was endorsed by John Greenhalgh, a prominent Christian, who, having visited the synagogue in April 1662, observed in a letter to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It says, when I was in a synagogue, I counted about 100 Jews, all merchants.
Merchants, meaning they knew how to be in the seas. Go ahead.
Not one mechanic person of them. Most were rich in apparel.
Rich in apparel. Fly garments. Right? Go ahead.
With various jewels glittering. For they are
sound like Harlem. Go ahead.
For they are the richest jewelers of any.
They are the richest jewelers of any, man. You understand that? Good. This can't be Amalek. Niggas wear a black suit, the same black suit for 3 weeks. That's what they do, brother. This is what they do. Stinking. I am the chosen. You seen them dance? Go ahead, Slakia. Go ahead, continue reading. You seen them? Go ahead,
They are generally black and may be distinguished from the Spaniards or native Greeks.
So they're black. Finish it up,
Their hair are more perfect raven black. They have a quick, piercing eye and strong intellect. Several of them are comely, gallant, proper gentlemen. I knew many who I saw daily upon the exchange.
Next slide.
So this is the images from the Leon's Bible.
Yeah, look at that image from the Leon's Bible, right? That don't look like white people to me. Okay? Read the source.
This is a source from Anglo-Israel.
Anglo-Israel. Okay? Like Anglo-Saxon. Angelic sons of Isaac. Okay? Read.
By William Henry Poole, age 258. He does a wonderful account into proving we're the people, by the way.
Wonderful.
Claudia Rufina, raised beneath the sun that shines on Britain's dark cerulean race. Whence comes it that thy heart is like our own, that thou hast such a beauteous form and face?
See that? So there was a dark, beautiful race in London.
Honoring our women.
See that?
It's like Muhammad did.
Right. Next slide.
First source is When Scotland Was Jewish by Elizabeth.
When Scotland was Jewish. Damn.
By Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman on page 59.
We're going to be in this book a little bit. Huh? Good.
The name Douglas means dark stranger in Gaelic and may have originated from the Mediterranean complexion of the family founders M. Brown in 1988.
Yeah, that's the quote. Okay.
The Douglases, so named for their dark coloring,
Go ahead.
were the dominant force on the borders of England and Scotland from 1300 all the way to 1455. From M. Brown in 1988. Family portraits attest to their Mediterranean physiognomy.
Who children was the family of the Douglas? Do y'all know? Who descended from the family of the Douglas? King James. Yeah, next one, huh? No, my bad. We missed something at the other slide. My bad. The last quote. Salakia.
So it's the same source, but page 61. Notable in this genealogy is the relatively frequent marriages with the royal Stuart family, which regarded itself as being of Jewish ancestry.
Now, Stuart is a rendition of swarthy or swart, okay, meaning dark skin. Okay.
Marriage to cousins of the same name, Douglas.
Okay.
And alliances with other families believed to be of Jewish descent.
Next slide. Now look at the right. That's Saint Sophia. That's in the Saint Sophia Cathedral in Novgorod, and that's a Russian icon. Okay, you see that right there? Read the source.
So this is the same female in source, and she says in 1306, for a variety of political, religious, and economic reasons.
This is all the same source. When Scotland was Jewish. Okay.
The Jews were expelled from France. And not coincidentally, we see families such as the Black Douglases arriving in Scotland.
You see that? So during feuds in France, they began to go where? Into England, into Scotland, and began to form certain empires there. Okay?
This expulsion followed close on the heels of Edward's I's banishment of Jews from England and Gascony in 1290. And there were smaller banishings of Jews from the cities in Germany and Italy. However, as Ben Bassa writes on page 15, the expulsion in France affected a greater number of Jews, almost 50,000 persons. Exiles found refuge in Lorraine, Alsace, the Rhine Valley, even Poland and Hungary, and the Duchy of Burgundy, the Dauphiny, Savoy, Provence, the Comtat Venetian, and Spain. We propose that several of these Jewish families made their way as well to Scotland, a possibility we will discuss in detail in chapters 7 and 9.
Next slide, huh?
So this is also the same source.
Same source. When Scotland was Jewish. Yeah.
From Spain, they took a merchant ship bound for the coast of Scotland. They landed at a place called Solway Firth, and finding the country Scotland in peace under the Protestant reign of King James VI, approximately between 1567 and 1603, who then became King James I, King of England through 1603 all the way to 1625. They determined to settle there. After finding a large landholder, he being a wealthy bishop of the place, they purchased from him a large estate. They then sent back to their native land for other relatives and friends, and in a few years became numerous and prosperous. But in order to acquire full title of this land, it was necessary that they should gain the consented signature of the king to their purchase. The king, upon signing their titles, imposed the following condition: that the three brothers should, when the king required it, each send a son with a troop of 20 men to aid in the wars of the king. Our forefathers were of dark skin with deep penetrating eyes. Although naturally of dark complexion and mingling with the blue-eyed belles of Scotland.
And mingling with the white people of Scotland, what began to happen?
Through 13 generations, the younger generations have shown many instances of the fair hair and blue eyes of their mother's family.
You see that? This is what began to happen. Go ahead.
Thus, the blue eyes and the black eyes appear in almost every family.
Next source. Through the mingling. And this is why the Sephardic Jews ain't want none of that. Now you see this on the right-hand side. This is Peter weeping after defying Christ 3 times. This is in the Bristol Psalter. Okay? Look at him. Looking like Yawasap from Sons of Thunder. Look at him. Look at him, man. Yeah, go into the source, huh?
This is Ancient and Modern Britons.
Good.
Ancient and Modern Britons by David McRitchie on page 205. And none among them of whatever race excelled that famous Scot, the Black Douglas. He belonged to the oldest sect of his clan, that known as the Black Douglases, a term of which many of the leaders were no doubt Scots. Although the more distinguished were chiefly non-Scottish, proves to be tautological when analyzed, since the black signifies the black, swarthy man.
You see that? Next slide. All this is making sense so far, right? Okay. You see that on the right? This is also from the Bristol Psalter, right? The Chaldean soldiers with Hebrew captives. So you see black on black crime. It's just both ain't Israelites. You understand that? Go ahead.
This is from the source of Nature Knows No Color Line on page 71. Ancient Welsh folktales certainly do mention black people. Slakia, Welsh folktales do mention black people, unmistakably Negroes. In the story of Peredur and the Mabunajin, the blacks mentioned therein might be Salurs, another ancient Welsh poem. Wadlud Imor tells of a robbery between white and black.
So you see, even in their folklores and myths and oral traditions, the Welsh, which is ancient Wales, right next to England, they had blacks within their folktales, and they were even of dark skin. Okay. Next source. Now you see the right? Right? This is also from the Bristol Psalter. Okay? You see that's King David. That's supposed to be King David in the middle. You see that? Yeah.
The Untold Story, revised edition by Edgar Shaw, is a source. In the year AD 1492, January 2nd, the Moorish stronghold of Granada surrendered to the armies of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. For the first time since the year 711, all of Spain was in Christians' hands. The decree to expel the Jews from Spain was signed on March 31st in one of the corridors of the Great Alhambra, the palace of the Moorish kings of Granada. The motive given for the expulsion of the Jews was conceived that they corrupted the Marianos Jews converted to Christianity by privately encouraging them in disloyalty to Christianity.
The Marianos Jews, the Moranos, the Morenos. This is why Spanish people say Moreno, because it goes to a secret Jew. That's what that means, if anybody didn't know that. All right? Next source. Now, once again, on the right, this is a fresco from Via Latina Catacomb in Rome. This is 320 AD. Abraham raises his son to slay Isaac. Those are black men. Okay, this is in Rome. Okay? Read the source.
So the source is from the Patriot.co, and it says, after the downfall of the Moors in Granada, Spain, the white countries of Europe took a special interest in Scotland because there was a thriving black population there. Unlike the Moors in Southern Europe, who were Muslims, The Scottish blacks were Christians and therefore could not be victimized on grounds of religion.
You see that? So they couldn't be victimized on what the certain laws that were being passed where? In the papacy in Rome. Okay? Because what Rome was doing was using a religious grounds to expose Jews and the Muslims out of Europe. But it was hard for them to do that in England. That's why England was one of the last strongholds of the blacks of Western Europe, because they were Christian. You understand? Next source.
This is the textbook of the origin and history of the colored people with an anti-slavery collection from Hartford in 1941 by a Skinner printer. It says the Portuguese who planted themselves on the coast of Africa a few centuries ago have been succeeded by descendants blacker than the Africans.
You see that? So the Portuguese are also known to be blacker than Africans. Okay?
A stronger case is still to be found in the fact that the descendants of a colony of Jews, originally from Judea, Southern Kingdom. We just read those precepts earlier. Go ahead. To the coast of Africa are black.
Are what?
Are black.
Are black. Next source. Now this right here. Early Spanish manuscript illumination by John Williams. Okay? We're going, this one right here heavy. Okay? Go to the next, now we're going to show what's in this book. All right? Go to the next one, huh? Next slide. Now I want you to take a good look at that. I want you to take, can you see what's highlighted? Nah, right? Sure? I think I took it out. Oh, he could zoom in. All praises.
I got it.
All right, read what's highlighted.
It says a little further on in the manuscript, monstrous white men and blacks.
Monstrous white men and what?
Blacks.
Now this is explaining the top right-hand corner. You see all those black men in red? The monstrous white man is on a goat. That's how because they were supposed to be monstrous white men on a goat. Why? Because they're signifying certain prophecies in the book of Revelation. Read it out. Read it again.
White men, monstrous white men and blacks carrying curved sabers and an emblazoned shield march toward the Antichrist.
March toward the Antichrist. That's when you go in the bottom. What's the Antichrist? The Vatican. And they're white people. You understand that? So the black Jews and the Moors and the Christians of Europe, they knew these. They knew who the devil was. They knew that these people were the Antichrist. You understand that? This is right there in their book. This is in their book, man. This is important right here.
What's the name of that book again?
That's the early Spanish manuscripts. It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And if you find one for cheap, it ain't the real one. I'm gonna tell you right now. It's like the 13th tribe. They'd be like, I got the 13th tribe. I pick on Barack all the time for this. It's like 70 something pages missing from your 13th tribe. No lie. Oh yeah, there is, brother. It wasn't $15. Okay, the real 13th tribe is a lot of money. Go to the next one. Now look at this. Same book. This is the same book. Now look closely. Who's fighting who? You got a bunch of black people on the right side with their kingdom fighting white invaders.
Yeah, they fringed out too.
You see that? With their garments on, their headpieces, they got their scarves. Nothing new under the sun. I didn't make this book. Just saying. Next source. Everybody know this, the Russian icons. I just want to show how he's painting black images white. Look behind him, the ones he didn't touch yet. Look at what he's painting. Another book that's very expensive.
$700.
Next source.
I tried to get it.
Salakia.
Too much for me.
Now you see that? That's the Moors of Yorkshire. This is in the Fairborn's Crest. That's where this book is from. I actually have that book, right? Now look at the crests of people in Europe. Look at the Moors. You see that? Those are all black people. Huh? Read the source.
Those are British families, by the way.
British families, right.
So the source is from
Tacitus, I always,
Tacitus
yeah.
Alice, translated by M. Hutton. The swarthy faces of the Silurs, the curly quality in general of their hair, and the position of Spain opposite their shores attest to the passage of Iberians in old days and the occupation by them of these districts.
See that? This is a very old source of somebody who's Greek, accounting to dark-skinned people. That the reason why it's called the Iberian Peninsula, Iberian meaning Hebrew. Okay, Ibar meaning Hebrew. That's why it's called the Iberian Peninsula. And who was there? Dark-skinned people. Next source. This might be the last one for medieval. Oh, no, I guess not. Slovakia. Well, you see that? That's the, I don't know how to say that Russian joint. Shalakovich, whatever. State History and Art Museum. Look at that. These are Russian icons. Okay?
These are museums of all the Russian artists.
Yes.
You can't take your black ass on that.
Yeah, read that.
This is from Delaware's Forgotten Folk, University of Pennsylvania, 1943, by C.L. Westlake. In 711 AD, the Moors crossed Straits of Gibraltar and began their conquest on the Spanish peninsula. After governing Spain for 800 years, the Moors were defeated by the Christians, and many of their descendants were sold to the slave traders, who brought them in shackles to America.
Who what?
Who brought them in shackles to America.
Hold on. So black Moors in Europe were brought to shackles to America. But the Moors were Jews. They were Muslims. They were Christians. But they were all black. So how are you going to tell me no slaves knew the Bible? Next source. Critical thinking. I'm going to start using that. Critical thinking.
The first source is from A History of the Inquisition of Spain by Henry Charles
This is important.
Lee on page 141.
Mm-hmm.
In the confusion following the invasion of Charles VIII in 1495, the people arose against them, the Jews, and many abandoned their religion to escape slaughter or slavery. Many were carried off to distant lands and sold as slaves.
So the Jews of Spain are being persecuted, kicked out, sold in distant lands as slaves. Okay, continue.
The second source is from the Jew in the Medieval World, a source book, 315 to 1791, from Jacob Rader Marcus. All Spanish Jews who were still in Portugal in 1493 were enslaved by King John, and his reign was from 1481 to 1495.
Mm-hmm.
The children were sent to the Isle of St. Thomas off the coast of Africa.
So they were sent to St. Thomas off the coast of Africa. They were also sent to Cape Verde. Okay? This is where the expulsion of the Jews of Spain began to happen. Watch this. Next source.
This is the Iberian roots of the transatlantic slave trade.
Iberian roots. Hebrew roots. This is what it's saying, literally. Iberian Hebrew. Hebrew roots of the transatlantic slave trade. Go ahead.
From 1440 to 1640.
Mm-hmm.
From Gilderman.org.
Mind you, we didn't even touch the west coast of Africa yet. We didn't even touch Pre-Columbian America yet. We didn't touch that part yet. We still on the medieval Jew. We're still here. I'm just saying. Yeah.
It's the Institute of American History.
The Institute of American History. I'm not making this up. Watch this. Read.
The first slave trade voyage.
The first slave trade voyage. Go ahead.
Known to have sailed directly from Africa to the Americas arrived in Santo Domingo on the island Hispaniola in 1525. The ship's cargo consisted of nearly 200 captives purchased in Sao Tome,
which is St. Thomas. Who was sent to St. Thomas? Jews of Europe. And then they were taken from that place and then brought as slaves to America. Watch this. Read.
Several additional slave ships disembarked enslaved Africans in Hispaniola, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica during the late 1520s and 1530s.
You see that? Next source. I believe it's done now. I think we're in West Africa. Oh, Salakia, we not. We still not in West Africa. We still not in West Africa. Go ahead.
This is charter granted by Emperor Charles V to Lorenzo de Gorvad for permission to transport slaves. Spain, August 18th, 1518, courtesy of the Archival General de Indias, Sevilla, Spain. Before 1518, the slave trade was highly regulated and consisted mostly of slaves being sent from Spain to the Americas.
From Spain to the Americas, they were sending slaves. Who were they sending? We just read it in the previous slide. Black Jews, Moors. Go ahead.
Directly by the Spanish government. However, Emperor Charles V opened the transatlantic slave trade on a massive scale on August 18, 1518, when he granted a charter to Lorenzo de Gorvad, giving him permission to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to Spanish American colonies. He circumvented the legal statute established by Fernando and Isabel that slaves must be born in Spain by allowing Africans to enter the Americas, provided they convert during the voyage.
See that? And you see the document right on top. Next source. Can't make this up, huh? Now you see the book on top. This is the history of the Inquisition. You can start right where it says King Emmanuel.
King Emmanuel was succeeded by John III. In 1521, who observing that Judaism was spread greatly in his time, that the Jews publicly professed their errors and taught them others, that his don't flick servants, not only as such proceeded from them, but those who were ancient Christians were infected with the portion of their doctrine, contemned the sacraments of the church, did not receive them in an article of death, treated with great irreverence holy images, and especially from the Virgin Mother of God, the Lady of Angels.
Some of the Virgin Mother of God.
They are the words of
Safna?
Yes.
Sansa. Because remember, this is old, so that the S's are F's. So it's a little confusing. This is old.
These things in his mind, he desired the Pope Clement VII, the holy tribunal of the Inquisition in his kingdom. And although this Pope, for a long while, and oftentimes refused it through the vigorous endeavors of the Jews, who to their utmost opposed the royal petition, for the Jews always hated this holy tribunal, as others do to this day. For what reason they less know. Yet at length, with difficulty, he granted it in form of law. And that would be the source of the date of January the 16th, 1531.
So this is showing what? They were forcing Jews to convert to Catholicism. I just wanted to show y'all these things. Right? And not keep the laws of God. This is what began to happen in Europe. Okay? The next source. Go ahead.
This is from the Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams. The massacre of the Jews that at Tuat took place in 1492, the very year that the Moors were driven out of Granada, and the previous influence of the Jewish people, especially in the north of Africa, may explain why the Dominicans, when they undertook mission work in Africa in the 13th century, required of their missionaries a knowledge of Hebrew as well as Arabic. Mm-hmm. Another possible explanation of this might be also that while Ghana itself was finally destroyed in 1240, the remnants of the Jewish Empire were still scattered throughout the Sudan.
So this is showing, all right, this is showing Jews of Europe and Jews of West Africa. This is now, I know where I'm at now. This is getting us ready for the next portion. Right? Go ahead.
The next source is the Inquisition Revealed on page 148.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman Catholics,
I think I spelled that wrong. Go ahead. It's like it.
Ignorant of the nature of the gospel, have endeavored wholly to destroy this people or to compel them to profess the Christian faith. Edicts, the most severe and cruel, have been published against them from time to time by different popes in France and Spain. They have been oppressed, fined, and banished unless they would turn Christians. Thousands of them in Spain and Portugal profess the name of Christ to escape punishment, yet in heart remaining Jews, abhorring the idolatry of papists. The inquisitors proceeded against them, therefore, as heretics and apostates.
Now, this is what was happening to our people in Europe. Okay? That was leading up to the age of discovery, Christopher Columbus, the exploration of the New World, conquering of the Northern Kingdom, so on and so forth. All right? Next portion. Now, I know it was a lot. All right? Y'all brothers could get up, y'all could stretch. You know what I'm saying? Go get some water. All right? Read that.
This is the Miseducation of the Negro on page 19 from 1933
by
Carter G. Woodson. Most missionary teachers of the freedmen, like most men of our time, have never read the interesting books of travel in Africa and had never heard of the Tariq-e-Sudan.
They never heard of the Tariq-e-Sudan. This is what he's saying in the Miseducation of the Negro. Next slide. That's the Tariq-e-Sudan. The Tariq-e-Sudan is talking about Jews in Africa, in West Africa. With the, you see that Jews of Bilad el-Sudan? This is what this is talking about. So why would somebody of the Miseducation of the Negro saying, they never told y'all to read this? That's how I found out about this source. I'm reading the Miseducation of the Negro and I said, what is that? And boom, it leads you to Jews in West Africa. Okay? That have an oral tradition of them fleeing Yemen and going into Africa and finally landing on the west coast of Africa. Go to the next slide. Now, this is the Tariq al-Fatish. This is in Timbuktu, the largest library in the world at that time. Okay? Read that out.
In the manuscript C of the Tariq al-Fatish Chronicles, a community called the Bani Israel existed.
The sons of Israel. Go ahead.
existed in Tendirma, Mali, in 1402 CE. They were said to own 333 wells, had 7 leaders, and had an army of 1,500 men. Tendirma is in the modern Timbuktu region of Mali.
You see that? This is documents written in Arabic of Jews in Africa. Next source.
In the land of Lemlem,
Read
the source is the Annuals of Oriental Literature, Volume 1 of 1892, on page 140 through 141.
Okay.
The first point is boundaries. The land of Lamlam is to the south of Berisi. It is bounded on the west of Mekzara, to the east of Wankarak, to the north of Ghana, to the south of uninhabited regions. It is not known whether there is any inhabited country of the south of Lamlam. To the westward of the town of Melil, along the stream which rises from the spring that supplies inhabitants with water from its source till it falls into the Nile, are many tribes of Negroes. Point 2, inhabitants. According to the accounts of the people of the neighboring countries, the natives of Lamlam are Jews.
Are what?
Are Jews.
They're Jews. Go ahead.
The greater part of them are plunged in ignorance and unbelief.
They're ignorance and unbelief. Because what are they doing? They're not keeping the laws. Go ahead.
The Negroes who live on the banks of the river, which rises from the mountains of the south of Melil, go naked, carry on no trade, have no regard for marriage, nor any sense of what is right. They are the most prolific of men. They are possessed of camels and goats. Their food consists of the milk of the goats and camels, the fish that they catch, and dried camel's flesh.
Now you could go to the next source on that.
The next source is Jews in Places You Never Thought Of by Karen Permack on page 9 through 10. In addition, Jewish, Arab, and Christian accounts cite the existence of Jewish rulers of certain tribal groups and clans identifying themselves as Jewish, scattered throughout Mauritania, Senegal, the Western Sudan, Nigeria, and Ghana.
See that? Jews scattered through all of these regions of West Africa. Yeah.
Among notable Arab historians referring to their existence at Ibn Khaldun, who lived in the 13th century, a respected authority on Berber history. The famous geographer Al-Idrisi, born in Ceuta or Salakia, Quetta, Spain, in the 12th century, who wrote about Jewish Negroes in the Western Sudan, and the 16th century historian and traveler Leon Africanus, a Muslim from Spain who was raised by a Jewish woman working in his family's household, who is said to have taught him Hebrew and emigrated with the family to Morocco in 1492. Leon Africanus later converted to Catholicism, but remained interested in Jewish communities he encountered throughout his travels in West Africa.
In West Africa. So you see Jews in West Africa. Continue.
The second source is from Leo Africanus, The Description of Africa, Volume 1, on page 32. Howbeit they say that upon Nilus, which was the Nile River, do inhabit two great and populous nations, one of Jews towards the west.
The Jews towards the west. Go ahead.
Under the government of a mighty king.
Next slide. Now you see on the right-hand side, this is a Hebrew inscription from Morocco, dated 3rd century BCE. CE, which is AD, Common Era. All right? A Hebrew inscription. Why is that in the west coast of Africa if we ain't there? Okay.
The source is from A System of Universal Geography, or a description of all parts of the world on a new plan, according to the great natural divisions of the globe, by Conrad Mount Brun. It says the kingdom of Loango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country. They are despised by the Negroes who do not even deign to eat with them. They are occupied in trade.
So they're despised by the Negroes, by other blacks. You understand that? Yeah.
They have a separate burying ground. So, let me go back up a little bit. They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day. They have a separate burying ground very far from any habitation. The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions.
And they're ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions. Next slide.
The sources from Al-Haggard, Al-Salam Shabini, collected and formatted by James Gray Jackson, an account of Timbuktu and Hosa in 1820. This place is reported to be inhabited by one of the lost tribes of Israel, possibly an immigration from the tribe of Judah. Yehuda in African Arabic signifies Judah. Yehudi signifies Jew. It is not impossible that many of the lost tribes of Israel may be found dispersed in the interior regions of Africa.
Damn.
When we shall become better acquainted with that continent, it is certain that some of the nations that possessed the country eastward of Palestine, when the Israelites were a favored nation, have immigrated to Africa. The next source is Jewish Roots in Africa by George E. Lichblow. Pause. Some evidence.
Lord in Christ, go ahead.
Some evidence can also be derived from surviving tribal traditions of some African ethnic groups, including links to biblical ancestors, names of localities. Jesus Christ. Localities.
It's all right. You've been reading for a minute. If you want to switch readers, man, just let me know, man. Go ahead.
I'll let you just not take a bathroom break. That's it.
Come on.
And ceremonies with affinities to Jewish ritual practices. Moreover, the writings of several modern West African historians and two personal anecdotes indicate that the memories of an influential Jewish historical past in West Africa continue to survive.
You see that? I'm just banging you in the head with sources. Source after source after source after source after source. That's all I'm going to keep doing all day. To emphatically prove who we are. All right? Next slide. we going to be here for a little while, y'all. Y'all can get up. Y'all can stretch. Go get a drink of water. Hopefully there's some of y'all young in the back. Y'all could loosen up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Hey, man, I'm not done, Ak. I'm not done, Ak. We on the next one? Nah, next slide. Look at that. You see that picture? That's the Magandawada. All right? The shield of David on the west coast of Africa on a cup. You understand? Go ahead, Ak.
The source is from Lud Luger of a Nigeria magazine.
Mm-hmm.
The design of the interlaced triangles is, think commonly so-called Solomon's seal.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know it and when it was adopted as a seal of Islam, but it was found on the lid of a very handsome goblet or jug of brass and copper covered with designs, which was captured by the troops when the emir of Kontagora, the principal slave raider in northern Nigeria, was defeated.
See that? Next slide.
The source is called the Encyclopedia of Jewish Diaspora, The Origins, Experiences, and Culture, Volume 1, by Mark Abram Ehrlich.
This is a very good book. You might walk past it because it's two Amalekites looking crazy in the front of the book. Very good book. Go ahead.
This is page 454 of the book. In the later centuries, Jews are believed to have settled in Western Africa during the height of Songhai, Mali, and Ghana, and the Kenan-Bonu empires. According to accounts from the explorers of the region, several powerful Jewish families of the Songhai Empire were of Jewish origin until Askia Muhammad came to power in 1492, decreed that all Jews either convert to Islam or leave the region. According to certain records in Timbuktu, an older community was formed by a group of Egyptian Jews who traveled by the way of the Sahel corridor through Chad and Somali. Another community was that of the Jua, ruler of the Kokia, located near the Niger River, whose name is only known as Zua Alayman or Zua min al-Yaman, meaning he comes from Yemen. Local legends state that Zua Alayman was a member of one of the Jewish colonies transported from Yemen by the Abyssinians in the 6th century CE. Zua Alayman is said to have traveled into West Africa along with his brother and eventually established a local Jewish community between Mali and northern Nigeria.
1 second, we have some technical difficulties. The white man's the devil the Bible speaks of. They was playing games. Let's go to the next source, and let's keep banging Amalek in the head, man. Let's keep banging Amalek in the head with these damn sources. All right, all praises. All praises. Let's go. Let's go. All right, you see on the right-hand side, that's the same place, right? That's something that holds oil, right? A menorah-shaped bronze lamp from, once again, Morocco, from the 4th to 5th century, right? Archaeological museum in Rabat. Once again, proving what? Jews in the west coast of Africa. This is the 4th, 5th century AD. All right? Read the source.
This is from The Earth and Its Inhabitants, The Universal Geography by Elise Recluse, Volume 12 of West Africa. The Mandingans, who are now broken up into many rival petty states, are excellent husbandmen, but display their remarkable talents chiefly as traders. They have been compared to the Syracuse, the Jews of West Africa.
Next source. Hold on. Technical difficulties. They playing. How am I getting muted on Clubhouse? Yo, I'm telling you, man. My bad. I'm back. Amalek muting me on Clubhouse. Amalek playing games with the Wi-Fi, but he can't stop me. Let's keep going. Next source. Read.
This is from The Travels of Ludovico of the Bothema in Egypt, Syria, Arabia Desert, and Arabia Felix, and Persia, India, and Ethiopia, AD 1503 to 1508. At the end of 8 days, we found a mountain which appeared to be 10 or 12 miles in circumference, in which mountain there dwell 4,000 or 5,000 Jews who go naked.
Now, medieval times, it's not literally butt naked. Okay, it means they're not having shirts, right? Just context. Niggas ain't running around with their rods out. Keep reading.
And are in height 5 of 6 spans, and have a feminine voice.
Disrespectful. We don't got no feminine voices. Keep reading now.
And are more black than any other color.
They are what?
More black than any other color.
Okay, continue.
They live entirely upon the flesh of sheep and eat nothing else. They are circumcised and confess that they are Jews.
Next source. Amalek mad right now. Strictly lamb diet. Different. They had lamb burgers. Continue. Lamb lasagna. This is how I know we need redemption and we in captivity, man. Lamb lasagna. Yeah, the next source out.
Sources from the Efik people by Elder Chief Efyon Ukpon Eeyou Nsa.
So, how did you do that so perfect?
What?
All right. So this is a damn chief of the tribe. This is him himself. Go ahead, read that.
This orient and pointed quite specifically and intelligently to Nubia, one of the ancient outgrowths of Egypt, peopled by the Falashas. The Falashas have been identified by world historians as black Jews who, feeling disenchanted by the inhuman treatment of the Israelites by the Egyptians of the time, moved out to establish on their own. From Nubia, movement reached ancient Ethiopia, which at some point in time became a world power. The birth, death, and resurrection of Christ ushered in a new worldview in a religion called Christianity, and the Ethiopians and Egyptians both went that way. At a point in time, another religion, Islam, was born out of Arabia, a religion which sought to take things by force. It swept through Egypt and conquered it with lots of deaths.
Now, this is honestly why I brought this source out, because ain't no damn Ethiopians Jews, Slaki. But I brought this source out mainly to show Islam beginning to conquer with force. Go ahead.
When the Ethiopians, the Falashas, heard of the intention of the Muslims to invade Ethiopia, majority of their ancestors pulled out and thus begun the famous migration story of the Efik people. These migrations took them through Sudan to Lake Chad, where the group became fragmented and went into different regions. The people now called Oran and Urain went into the Cameroon. Some went into Ghana, while others went into Congo and Equatorial Guinea.
So there's a history of the Jews of West Africa through their migration through East Africa. That's why I showed you this. Okay? But it ain't no damn Ethiopians, man. They trying to connect the two. It ain't. That's not. No. Next source.
The Stella Montrana is a Hebrew language tombstone found in Morocco.
Now another Hebrew tombstone in Morocco. That's the third archaeological piece in Morocco with Hebrew inscriptions that I showed. I'm just saying. Yeah, read the source out.
The source is from the Jews, Race, and Environment by Maurice Fishberg on page 149.
Mm-hmm.
Bastian speaks of Negro Jews living on the Loango coast in West Africa. Movambu, or Judeos, they are called there. They are, on the whole, a fair-looking race, says Bastian. They are more serious and restrained than the rest of the Negroes. Although in other places they are despised, here they take a dominating position, or at least such as to be respected and partly even feared, because they are rich and have most of the commerce in their hands. The same author claims that though they are of Negro race, still he detected Semitic Ambifopino on the east coast of that island. He met natives who called themselves Zafi Ibrahim, or descendants of Abraham, and who claimed to be altogether Jews. But I could not detect any difference in color, features, or dialect between them and the other people of the eastern coast, comments the author.
You see that? Let's continue. Next source.
This source is a system of universal geography, or a description of all parts of the world by Conrad Mount Brun, Jean-Jacques definition, Nicholas Hood on page 101. A fact worthy the attention of travelers is that, according to Aldendorf, the kingdom of Loango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country.
Black Jews scattered throughout the country. Go ahead.
They are despised by the Negroes who do not even deign to eat with them.
So these are the Hamites. Now we have sources here that show Jews in West Africa being separate from the Hamites. So when they tell you black, sold blacks, no. Hamites sold Israel. And we could prove this with the scriptures. We could go to Joel 3 easily. We could go to Amos 1 easily. Quick. Boop, boop. but it's always good to make the scriptures come alive. Go ahead.
They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day.
Mm-hmm.
They have a separate burying ground, very far from any habitation.
Mm-hmm.
The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions.
With Hebrew inscriptions. You could stop there. You could go to the next verse.
Next slide.
I mean, next slide. I'm used to, I'm used to Bible verses, man. You know? Read that, brother.
This is the source from Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger, a devil. Go ahead.
Tuesday, January 28, 1969, from the Memorandum for the President.
Go ahead.
Biafra, which is 3,000 square miles and populates 4 to 6 million. Colonel Ojukwu, 35, British trained, erstwhile playboy, presides over the popular support and military morale of a people convinced that defeat means extinction. The Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa, gifted, aggressive, westernized, at best envied and resented, but mostly despised by the mass of their neighbors in the Federation.
Despised by the mass of their neighbors. Go ahead.
They have fought well by African standards against heavy odds. Their cynical public relations use of the starvation has been brilliant.
This is Henry Kissinger? No sweat. Keep reading on.
The next source is the biblical Hebrew origin of the Japanese people by J. Edelberg.
Now, I will bring this source out in the future when I go into the samurai, when I go into the certain people within the mountains of Japan. Okay? Because remember, we everywhere. Okay? And we were the samurai. Those were Jews. Those were Israelites, to be exact. Okay?
From page 11 and 12. In 1972, after returning from the Ivory Coast, the author published his first book, Bambara, a story about Hebrew biblical footprints left in ancient African cultures that uncovers as a fascinating step-by-step puzzle. The 40-year mysterious journey through African coasts, deserts, mountains, and seas on the way from Egypt to Israel during his engineering career, while managing large Israeli overseas engineering operations, including Iran and Ivory Coast, the author discovered some interesting linguistic and cultural similarities between the Hebrew language and Bambara, spoken by an African tribe in Mali.
See that? Similarities between Hebrew and the languages of Bambara. Now, of course, over time, through the synchronism of cultures and the amalgamation of marriages and tribes, the Hebrew dialect will change. But there's still remnants and leftovers that proves that these are the children of Israel. These are Jews. Next slide. Now, this is a depiction. You see the source up top, Bambara people in Upper Senegal, right? Illustration from colonial phrase, right? That's a depiction of these people. They wearing, see what they wearing? That's Hebrew culture. Next slide. Now you see on the right side, Hebrew Wisdoms of West Africa, this page 83, a drawing by Sir Henry Morton Stanley in 1884. Now, if you look at this picture, this is a man on the west coast of Africa with a mitre and a breastplate, and a Israelite Levitical breastplate. Okay? Read the source out.
This is from Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams on page 66. Thus far, however, we have shown certain cultural elements to the Ashanti in the ancient Hebrews, such as their religious dances, use of amen, vowel value, patriarchal system, parallel symbolism of authority in stool and chair, endogamy, cross-cousin marriages, familiar names, simplicity of marriage rite and the part wine plays in the ceremony, uncleanness after the child is born, purification ceremony, menstrual seclusion, and ceremonial ablutions. Besides Ashanti loan words apparent to Hebrew origin.
Ashanti. You see this? The Ashanti, I'm not even gonna, I'll bring that out next time. Next slide.
The source is among the Igbos of Nigeria.
Now, I'll give a teaser here.
Missionary by G.T. Basden.
I'm gonna give a teaser here, right? The Igbos was primarily sent where?
America.
Haiti and Louisiana. Read out.
The Igbo country lies within the recognized Negro belt, and the people bear the main characteristics of that stock. There are certain customs which rather point to Levite influence.
To what?
To Levite influence.
To what?
To Levite influence.
These people were sent to Haiti. But the 12 tribe. Anyway, go ahead, continue out.
At a more or less remote period. This is suggested in the underlying ideas concerning sacrifice and in the practice of circumcision.
Mm-hmm.
The language also bears several interesting parallels with Hebrew idioms.
Next slide.
This is from The Earth and Its Inhabitants, The Universal Geography by Elise Recluse, Volume 12. East of the Great Popo begins the Dahomey territory.
Now, everybody probably heard of that movie, right? A Woman King, Dahomey. They'd be like, the Dahomey is not a people. The Dahomey is a land. Okay? That's what it is. It's not the Dahomey tribe. There's no Dahomey tribe. That's what the land and the empire was called. Okay? Just got to put that out there. Go ahead, Ak.
Guarded by the important town of Glahuke, known to Europeans by the various names of Fida, Havida, Wida, and Wida. The old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be the Jews.
See that? Go ahead.
During the flourishing days of the slave trade, from 16 to 18,000 were annually transported from Ahuda, as the Portuguese called this place, which at the time had a population of 35,000.
Why were these cities called Judah? I'm just saying. Okay, next slide. Oh, Slaki. All right, so you see on the right-hand side, this is what will be the original depiction of what will be the woman king. Now, this is after they were conquered, okay? But these are the descendants of these lands, all right? Read the source.
The source is A Mission to Galil, King of Dahomey by Captain Sir Richard F. Burton on page 191. The eye dwells with delight upon the numerous country villages, like the 115 towns of the tribe of Judah, and upon the thin forest of palms rising from the tapestry of herbage, here waving, there cut short, which combine to make this spot the Firdaus or paradise of the Dahomey land.
Next source. Now, you see the where this comes from, right? Can you zoom in, Abayak? Because I need you to zoom in for this, to this map. Now you see is a map, page 257 on Alan Howard Godfrey's Lost Tribes Myth, making the location of the known Negro Jews in the African continent of the Southern Mediterranean. Can you zoom in on? Is that the most you can zoom in? There gotta be a way you can zoom in. If you can't zoom in, it's all good. This slide will be pointless. We'll just go to the next one. Because I need to see the landmarks and the names of the people there. That's what I want to show. It's going to say, in the west coast of Africa, even going into North Africa, you're going to see Levite cities, the land of Judah, Ephraimites, You're going to see that all scattered through the west coast of Africa. That's all right. Go to the next slide. Yeah, read that.
The source is from the Jewish Virtual Library. And this is according to Zakor, some of the Jewish survivors from the Tuat, following the routes of the caravans, took refuge with other Jews settled along the Niger, but their safety was only temporary. Soon afterwards, in 1493, under the influence of the same El Meghili, acts via Muhammad the Great, the ruler of this region, introduced an edict for the eviction of the Jews of the Songhai. They apparently found themselves in the position of choosing either to renounce their faith or die. Hadera, the leader of the Zakor, noted that the Jews could not go further in front of the great Nile of the Arabs, that is, the river Niger. They stopped facing the Quran and the sword. They converted. This was how he concluded that black Jews became Muslims. Today, the members of the Zakor portray themselves as a small, early Jewish population, which is said to have been superseded by the subsequent Islamic community, with only tiny remnants of Judaism surviving. The heads of the families who founded Zakor relate that the three families constituting the community from the 16th century, the Levite Kahats, now named Kati, the Cohens, and the Abanas, were not in fact the first Jewish inhabitants of this region, of these regions.
You see that? More and more sources. We're gonna keep going, man. Yeah.
Kohath is the second-born son of Levi.
Right. Yeah, I'll go into that.
So the source, the next source, the Jewish Virtual Library, and it says the decline of the Jewish communities of West Africa can be traced to the arrival of Muslim invaders in the 14th and 15th centuries. North and West African Jews banded with other local communities of the Berbers, Christians, and Greeks to ward off the invaders, but eventually succumbed. Many were forced to convert to Islam, sold into slavery, or simply massacred. In the face of this persecution, written traditions such as the Torah were lost. The Igbo B'nai Israel, though having no written evidence of their Jewish heritage, maintained a strong oral tradition and practiced many Jewish customs in secret. Records of this medieval Jewish communities found in the Timbuktu Mali Islamic Library indicate the presence of Jewish families in the region before the arrival of Islam in the 1300s Common Era.
Keep going.
This is the next source. Places of memory and legacies in the age of insecurities and globalization, page 145. In the same mindset, in 2013, Islamists in Mali, affiliated with Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, burned two libraries containing thousands of
libraries. Okay.
Containing thousands of the Timbuktu manuscripts, dating back as far as 1202 and written in such languages as Arabic, Songhai, Tamashek, Bambara,
Hebrew, okay,
and
Turkish. Next slide. Okay.
This is the Untold Story Revised Edition by Edgar Shaw. The black Jews went to Portuguese colonial possessions of Western Africa, which was Guinea, São Tomé, Senegal, Angola, and a few islands near the African coast. Throughout the persecutions in Portugal, thousands of Jews left the country. The Jews were leaving the country in such massive numbers that in 1499 and 1531, the kings published a law forbidding the new Christians, which would be the black Jews, from leaving Portugal without special permits. Cecile Roth wrote that the Christian Jews emigrating to the Portuguese colony of Angola in West Africa were agents of the Inquisition and were sent to ferret them out in 1626. It is certain that many black Jews of Portugal, São Tomé, and Angola, who became victims of the Inquisition and Portuguese persecutions, were sold into slave trade.
Right. That's what I'm saying. All of the sources I bring up are going to marry each other. They're all going to merge. Okay?
This is The World, a Very Small Place in Africa, page 67. Christian and New Christian, Portuguese and Luso-Africans. These were Portuguese, a member of whom eventually being New Christians or conversios, mostly Sephardic Jews forced to convert into Christianity and then persecuted by Old Christians.
Mhm.
Before long, sexualizations between these immigrants and Africans produced a group of Luso-Africans.
A group of Luso-Africans. Keep that in your head. Okay? Men taking Jewish men or Jews, black Jews of Portugal, we already know this, taking African women and having something known as history as Luso-Africans. Keep this in your mind. Next slide.
The next source is Portuguese Style and Luso-African Identity by Peter Mark. On page 20, oh, that is a year. That's 10.
It's all good. Yeah, bring it out.
So this is description of the Luso-African dwellings in 17th century illustrations of Afro-Brazilian architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Offer graphic evidence of the movement of people, European and Euro-African traders, as well as African slaves between the Guinea coast and Brazil.
Next source.
The next source is Parfit Tudor from 2020, Hybrid Hate. Conflations of anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism from the Renaissance to the Third Reich, New York. Oxford University press pages 64 all the way to 65 to 75. Judaism has been present in sub-Saharan Africa for centuries. Beginning in the 15th century, Jews who were fleeing persecution in Spain and Portugal founded small mixed communities down the west coast of Africa. There was also an identifiable Black Jewish community, which was probably of Spanish origin in the West African kingdom of Luango until the end of the 19th century.
Go ahead.
The last source is The Jews of North Africa by Sirach Taleb Garland on page 31. In 1512, Spain invaded Oran and Bogi and sold a great number of Jews from these cities as slaves.
Next slide.
This is the source of Black Jews, the religious challenge or politics versus religion by Ulysses Santa Maria. In the 12th century, El-Idrisi, the Andalusian geographer, also cited the Hebrew colony of Lam located 200 miles from Timbuktu, and the existence of two Jewish towns on the Niger. Then 1 century later, Haji and Agwati added this: there is a race of people in Togur called Megjahariah who are converted Jews. Their women speak Hebrew in order to not to be understood. From this period onwards, there was a very significant Jewish influence throughout North Africa to such an extent that Dominican missionaries had to learn Hebrew and Arabic.
Now we've seen this in the last source, because all the sources once again are marrying each other. Because in the mouth of what? 2 or 3 witnesses. That's why I'm doing this. Go ahead.
But what about the south of this margin of the Saharan contracts? In the reign of John II of Portugal, nearly 700 Jews were taken from their kin and deported to the island of Sao Tome, which is St. Thomas, on the west coast of Africa. This island is also close to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. Escaping from St. Thomas, the Jews emigrated to the coast of Angola between 1484 and 1499. They must have settled in several Portuguese colonies and over the centuries mixed with the indigenous Black population. Near the Congo and Gabon in 1776, Black Jews called Bavambu, or even Movambo, Mayomba, May, or Mavumbu, lived on the coast of Luango by the river named the Rio Muni. It would seem that they adopted Christianity at the same time as maintaining their Judaism. By 1847, David Livingstone discovered a group of educated Blacks living in the interior some 200 miles away from the coast of Luango. These Blacks were called the Jews of Angola. They were good merchants, learned easily, and had a knowledge of Portuguese law and history. They were often employed as clerks and writers. For Livingstone, there was no doubt but that these people were descendants of those who had been deported from Portugal in the 15th century. Other evidence supports his intuition. In Savage Africa, Winwood reads, right of having met in Guinea blacks claiming to be Portuguese around 1864. Closer to our time, Dr. J. Kreppel noted that sometime after the First World War, that a large community of black Jews existed in the interior of Dahomey. These Jews had the 5 books of Moses written on old parchment in Hebrew.
See that? I really could just stop it here, but I don't want to. Oh, a couple brothers is tired. I see it in your faces, but you'll be all right. You'll be all right, because I'm not finished. Still got a good amount to go. Salakia. All right? This is why the white man tried to ruin our spirits. He shut off the damn YouTube. I don't know how I was getting muted on Clubhouse. I don't know how he did that. I'm literally pressing unmute. 2 seconds later, I'm getting muted. Devil, man. All right, next source. That's it, right? Yeah, read that.
This is from the
This right here is a primary. Just want to say that. Go ahead.
This is the Portuguese in West Africa from 1415 all the way to 1670 on pages 76 to 77. In this country and in Mandinga, there are Jews who are called Gaul and they are black like the people of the country. However, they do not have synagogues and do not practice the ceremonies of other Jews.
They don't practice the ceremonies of the other Jews. Who's the other Jews? No. The Sephardi and the Jews of the expulsion of Spain and Portugal. That's who they are. So this shows you what? Because a lot of arguments that you'll hear is, well, the Jews only went to the west coast of Africa after the expulsion of the Jews. There's no evidence of them there before that. Even though I show archaeology of Hebrew inscriptions going to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD of Hebrew inscriptions in Morocco. But besides the archaeology, this right here is showing you what? There was a separate group of people who were Jews, Israelites on the west coast of Africa that had different certain types of way of keeping their customs than the people of Spain and Portugal. That shows you a distinct difference. This is why I'm bringing this out. Because that's an argument they like to make. Keep reading.
They do not live with other blacks, but separate from them in their own villages. These Gauls are usually jesters and singers and play on viols and cabocos. And because they dare not to enter the villages, they take up a position behind the houses of the lords of the village. And at daybreak, they sing his praises until he orders them to be given a ration of millet.
They were at the low class of society underneath the Hamites. Go ahead.
And then they go away. And when the Lord leaves his house, these Jews go in front of him singing and calling out their jests. If the Jew did not know these jests, and if they did not greet the Lord in this way, they would not be tolerated by the blacks. For so great is the ill will felt towards them that they are barred by the blacks and do not dare enter one of their houses except that of the Lord. And if they are found in the village, they are beaten with sticks.
See that? Go ahead.
No Gaul, whether a Jew or Jewess, may take water from a spring until everyone else has finished drawing water. And then the last person will give them water. Or if they live in a country where there is a lot of water, they have some spring of their own set apart. So
this is the oppression of Jews by the Hamites in West Africa. See that? And they wonder why we say we hate Hamites too. Yeah. Did he skip something?
Yeah.
You skipped something, huh? Good. This is the last one. Then we go into Pre-Columbian America.
The sources from the history of the mission of the evangelical brethren on the Caribbean islands of St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John by C.J.A. Oldendorps on page 167 through 168. According to the same Negro, there are blacks in Luango who observe the Sabbath so strictly that they do not utter one word on that day. They live dispersed about and engage in trade, even though they are completely similar to other Negroes in their outward appearance. They are so despised by them that they will not eat with them. They have their own burial ground, which is located far from the dwellings of the Negroes. Their graves are of masonry, and figures of snakes, lizards, and the like are painted on them by those who bury the body. This appears ridiculous to the Negroes. Since such paintings are so dissimilar to Jewish practices, the assumption is perhaps not improbable that the writing or letters on the Jewish graves appeared to the Negroes to be pictures of snakes, lizards, and so forth.
All right. All praises. Now you see, what do the Israelites have over there? Or the native Indians? Fringes. Look at them garments. Read that out.
This is the archives of the Aboriginal knowledge containing all the original papers laid before Congress, respecting the history, antiquities, language, ethnologically, pictography, rites, superstitions, and mythology of the Indian tribes of the United States by Henry R. Schoolcraft. In regards to the manners, customs, habits, etc., of the wild tribes of the Western Territory, a true and more correct type than any I have ever seen may be found in the ancient history of the Jews or Israelites after their liberation from Egyptian bondage. The medicine lodge of the Indian may be compared to the place of worship or tabernacle of the Jews, and the sacrifices, offerings, purifications, oblations, and anointings may be all found amongst and practiced by those people.
Continue. Next source. Now you see on the right-hand side, that is a depiction of a Mayan man, which is wearing a breastplate, which is wearing what? A turban. Keep reading. Or better known as a mitri. Go ahead.
Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids by Peter Tompkins on page 79. In a manuscript written in Quiche in 1554 by several Mayan Indians, its Spanish translator, Padre Dionisio Jose Chones, had this to say. It is supposed in this manuscript that these three great Quiche nations mentioned in particular are descendants of the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel, whom Shalmaneser reduced to perpetual captivity, and who, finding themselves in confines of Assyria, decided to emigrate.
This is in their manuscript. Go ahead.
The actual text ran, these then were the three nations of Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises.
They came from where the sun rises. Go ahead.
Descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs.
Next source. Now you see this? Another Mayan. He's wearing a shield of David. Go ahead, read that.
The source is Crónicas Indigenas de Guatemala. In 1524, the Mayans of themselves said, "We are the grandchildren of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were called that way. We are also those of Israel. Our grandparents stayed in Canaan, in that land of God that our Lord granted to Abraham."
Next source. This is what the Indians are saying themselves, by the way. Go ahead.
The History of the Indies of New Spain by Fray Diego de Ren. However, lacking that revelation, we can only speculate and conjecture about these beginnings. Basing ourselves on the evidence provided by these people, whose strange ways, conduct, and lowly actions are like so those of the Hebrews. Thus, we can positively affirm that they are Jews and Hebrews. And I would not commit a great error if I were to state this as fact. Considering their way of life, their ceremonies, their rites and superstitions, their omens and hypocrisies, so akin to and the characteristics of those of the Jews, in no way do they seem to differ. The Holy Scriptures bear witness to this. and from them we draw proofs and reasons for holding this opinion to be true.
Next source.
The source, The 10 Tribes of Israel by Timothy R. Jenkins, page 16. The following is Alexander's Messenger, published many years ago in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A government officer stationed
And by the way, if you think this is fake, I have the actual primary source because I hold things back for debates. So I have the actual newspaper. Just saying. So go ahead.
A government officer stationed at Lake Superior at an early day before any white settlers had invaded that part of the country, after becoming acquainted with a number of Indian tribes, found one tribe in possession of a copper tube tightly soldered. And when asked what it contained, they said they were not able to tell, but they had received it from their ancestors a long time ago. The officer finally prevailed upon them to let them open the article, and when he did so, he found it filled with parchment, with inscriptions that he could not read. But by sending the parchment to Washington City, where it was examined by competent Hebrew scholars, it was declared to be part of the 5 books of Moses. Here, we have another link in the chain, proving that the Hebrews were here many years before the white man came to this continent.
The devil.
And that the present North American Indians are their descendants.
Next source.
The source is Cherokee Religion, Alvin O. Langdon, Chief Ottawa, Cherokee Nation State of Tennessee. In the beginning, Yahweh created the sky world and our mother
In
earth.
the beginning, Yahweh. Yahweh. Go ahead.
The waters around the earth were dark and deep, but the spirit of Yahweh moved upon the face of the waters. And Yahweh said, "Let there be light," and the sky world and our mother, the earth, lit up. That's the pronunciation how they speak.
Right.
And Yahweh called the light day because we could see to work and to plant our crops. And he called the darkness night because we could rest in cool comfort. And Yahweh divided the waters of the sky world and the waters of the earth world. And it so came to pass that everything Yahweh had made was created in 6 suns, and he had satisfied with his creations. And this is why Yahweh has commanded us to rest on the 7th day and to respect the number 7.
Damn. Now you see on the right is a Mayan sculpture identified by Alexander Von. I have this book. This book is thousands of dollars. All right. And it shows a lot of depictions in it. It's called something about unfamiliar faces in ancient America. And it goes into a lot of things. I'm gonna just leave it like that. But this is one picture from that book that shows a Mayan with the shield of David on his ear.
Yep.
See that? Yeah, read the source.
The source is from Manasseh ben Israel, the Hope of Israel, translated to English in 1652. It says, "I shall speak somewhat in this discourse of the diverse opinions which have been, and shall declare in what countries it is thought the 10 tribes are: Hispaniola, which would be the Dominican Republic, the island of Cuba, the continent of America, Panama, New Spain, Mexico, and Peru."
Next slide.
This source is from Mariano Edward Rivero, John James Vault Schutte, Peruvian Antiquities in 1857. Like the Jews, the Indians offer their first fruits. They keep their new moons and their feasts of expiations at the end of September or in the beginning of October. They divide the year into 4 seasons corresponding with the Jewish festivals. In some parts of North America, circumcision is practiced. There's also much analogy between the Hebrews and Indians and that which concerns various rites and customs, such as the ceremonies of purification, the use of the bath, fasting, and the manner of prayer. The Indians likewise abstain from the blood of animals, as also from fish without scales. They consider divers quadrupeds unclean, also certain birds and reptiles, and they are accustomed to offer as a holocaust of firstlings of the flock.
Next. Now on the right You see the details, the first page of the Boeotian Codex depicting the departure from Aztlan. Now that's the depiction up top. That's the actual manuscript on the bottom. Because what the Spanish and the conquistadors were doing is they were going to the walls of the pyramids and the walls of the cities, and they were drawing what they can do the best way they can. Okay? So this right here is a story in the ancient Aztecs that was showing that they came from over the sea where the sun rises. And he's going to read it right now, what they're depicting. Okay?
This source is from the Pre-Columbian Landscapes of Creation. In Origin Editor, John Edward Staller, page 122. All of the major Kachin sources are consistent in relating that the mythological founding fathers of the Kachin nations originated from somewhere across the sea. According to Popol Vuh, the forefathers Balaam Quidzi, Balaam Akab, Mahukata, and Akui Balaam came from Chapapala, across the sea. Ulet al-Kushi, where the sun emerges, that is from your east.
So that's where they came from. Now, this is the actual depiction that they were drawing from the walls. You see that? They were depicting that they came from across the sea. Next slide. This is known as the Newark Holy Stones. Now you got the Decalogue and you got the keystone here. Now you see the pictures. You see how they look. Hebrew inscriptions right there in Ohio. Okay? You can read it out.
The Newark Holy Stones and the Decalogue Stone in June and November of 1860, respected Licking County, Newark, Ohio surveyor David Warwick unearthed two stones bearing Hebrew inscriptions. The first was a triangular-shaped keystone, number 2 in photo above, and the second was called the Decalogue Stone, which is the number 1, encased in sandstone, and the sarcophagus, numbers 3 and 4, and accompanied by a small stone bowl, which is number 5, nearly the size and shape of Hebrew temple ritual bowls.
This is in Ohio. Next source. It's the Bat Creek Stone, found in a mound. All right, I believe it was in Tennessee. All right, he's going to read it now.
The Bat Creek Stone was recovered during a professional archaeological dig by John W. Emmer of the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of Ethnology in 1889 during its mound survey project. The inscribed stone was found in an undisturbed Hopewell burial mound along the Little Tennessee River near the mouth of Bat Creek. Additional Hopewell diagnostic artifacts recovered with the stone include bone and wood and pieces and 2 brass bracelets whose metallurgical properties nearly match those of ancient Jews in the Levant, Israel, portions of the Mediterranean. The inscriptions on the stone was assumed to be Paleo-Cherokee and subsequently published by the Smithsonian in their annual report of the Bureau of Ethnology between 1890 and 1891 on page 392. In 1964, Chicago patent attorney Henriette Mertz and Hebrew linguistics expert Dr. Cyrus Gordon identified the writing as a form of ancient Paleo-Hebrew Judaic. They discovered that the stone had been published by the Smithsonian upside down and that it was legible Hebrew once the stone was rotated.
Next slide. This is the Grave Creek Stone. A lot of people don't know about this one. Go ahead.
Near Braxton Creek, West Virginia, have been found which bear identical characters. This text may represent a form of Paleo-Hebrew dating from around 250 BCE.
250 BCE in Virginia. Next source. Now this is right. Guess where this is right by? This is right by, because I don't got to put this in, the Los Lunas stone. This is right. First of all, there's more than just the Los Lunas stone. All the surrounding areas have a bunch of pictographs and depictions of a variety of things. Now, this is a depiction right here of what would be the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so when you go around here with the natives describe this as an ancient tradition on how their ancestors will carry something that held something dear inside that was ordained from the Great Spirit. Yeah, read the source.
This is the history of the American Indians, London. Edward and Charles Dilly of 1775 on page 13. From the most accurate observations I could make, in the long time I traded among the Indians of America, I was forced to believe them lineally descended from the tribes of Israel.
Next source. Now you see that this is a garment of Ohio Indians. You see the borders of blue with the fringe? The borders of blue with the fringe. Go ahead, Al.
This is the Occident by Isaac Lesser. The sons of Jacob was walking on the soil of Ohio many centuries before the birth of Columbus.
Next source. Now the bottom is a depiction of certain royalty that were Incans. Okay? This is a panel from the painting of Larco Museum in Lima, Peru, depicting the Incan emperors. All right, read the source.
This is a companion to Global Historical Thought by Wiley Blackwell on page 217 and 218. In Peru, the Inquisition hypothesizing that the natives might have been descended from one of the lost tribes of Israel associated the conversos with the Incas, who supposedly resembled physically the ancient Hebrews.
Next source. Now you see these, I put this on the side, right? Now you see these pyramids of Mesoamerica that are the same thing as known as ziggurats in ancient Sumeria. So why would there be a comparison of the pyramids here and the pyramids of the Middle East? I'm just saying. Yeah, read the source out.
This is Yucatan before and after the conquest.
This is another primary source, by the way. Okay.
On page 8. Some old men of the Yucatan say that they have heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, whom God delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea. If this is true, all the inhabitants of the Indies must be of Jewish descent.
Next source.
This is from PBS Nova Online. Where are the 10 lost tribes?
Now this is from PBS, a profound, what you call it, media outlet. Now, just like I said with the other one, I have the primary on this, but I'll save it. Okay, read this out.
This is in the early 16th century. Bartholomew de las Casas became the champion of the Native American Indians, devoting his lifetime to improving their conditions. In the West Indies, Peru and Guatemala, Las Casas wrote, these Indians can bring near the redemption if we treat them humanly in this world and convert them to Christianity. We are preparing for the redemption of the Western world and the Messianic era. Their conversion is apt indeed, as I am convinced that Indians originate in ancient Israel. Indeed, I can bring proof from the Bible that they are of the lost tribes. The association of the Indians with the lost tribes was heard again and again. The report by Portuguese traveler Antonio Montesinos, some 120 years later, aroused remarkable interest. It was a thrilling journey I took in South America. Now that I am back in Amsterdam, I must share with you some incredible news. This nigga demon. There is a Jewish Indian tribe living beyond the mountain passes of the Andes. Indeed, I must heard them recite the Shema, the expression of the Jewish faith, and saw them
Which
observe,
is Shema Yasha'ala Yahweh Alahayanawa Yahweh Achad. Yeah.
and saw them observe the Jewish rituals. Christian theologians awaiting the second coming were thrilled to receive this welcome news. The tradition held that when the 10 tribes were found, reunited and restored to the Holy Land, The Messianic age will close at hand.
Next source.
This is continuing. The American tribes on whom I'm about to treat have a general character peculiar to themselves, yet they differ in some striking particulars one from another. Their general resemblance has been observed by many persons who independently of each other have visited distant parts of that vast continent. There has been found a great likeness throughout, together with the lines of difference, similar to those which are seen in the societies that possess the lands of the old hemisphere, although they are spread over a country which bears a near proportion to the eastern continent, and stretches as wide from north to south into the frigid and over the torrid zone. Still a great resemblance is discovered among them. They have all the appearance of being descended from one stock. I shall produce much more than the mere conjecture, many circumstances which amount to a strong presumptive proof and abundance of corroborating facts. Those minor points in similitude will be regarded in the proper light and be allowed to throw in their might of evidence in support of the interesting fact that the immense population which the continent of America was found to be inhabited on its first discovery were the direct lineal descendants of the 9 tribes of a half or large part of them that were carried captive by the Assyrian king, and since their banishment from their own country had been lost to their brethren, the Jews, and to all the historians of latter times. But they can be altogether lost, or can they be intermingled among the new tribes that had been formed in the new kingdoms that have sprung up? They constituted a large portion of the chosen people of God, concerning whom so many prophecies stand recorded in the holy books, for whom so many striking interferences took place under the direct agency of the Almighty, for the express purpose of separating them from the idolatrous nations, of keeping them a distinct and peculiar people, of making them bear his name to the ends of the earth and spread his glory among the nations. Can they then be lost, destroyed, rooted out from the habitations of men? Or can they be so amalgamated with those idolaters who conquered them, or with those people with whom they have since dwelt, as to be no more known a separate people, as to have lost their identity and be nowhere to be found in that day to which the language of prophecy directs our attention, when those have been dispersed among the nations, and those who have been cast out shall alike be called by special voice of God to return.
Now, this is the source because it's being blocked out from the bottom from this, right? This is A View of the American Indians by Israel Worsley, page 3 through 9. All right. Next slide.
The source is by Edward John Payne, History of the New World Called America in 1899. By way of illustrating the method of miscellaneous affinities, we will follow our author yet a step further. From Cuba, he passes to Haiti. The true form of which name he tells us is Kaitin Tetuakuth. He supposes this is to be derived from the bold Israelite who first reached the island. At any rate, it is pure Hebrew, though we are not enlightened as to its meaning. The Una River, which rolls its golden sands through the great eastern valley of Haiti, bears the name of the prophet Jonah. The Yaqui, that of the patriarch Jacob. As for the peninsula of Samana, that is named from the Midianite chief Zalmunna, the river Hena or Jana, on whose banks the ruins of Buenaventura still mark the mines of Columbus, is named the Ain, a fountain. Carib, canoe, and Kakike, Makana, which is club, and Aji, which is chili pepper, are alike referred to as Jewish origin. The next source is Edward John Payne, History of the New World Called America, which is the same source. By the way of illustrating the method of miscellaneous affinities, we will follow our author yet a step further. From Cuba, he passes to Haiti. The true form of which name he tells us is Kaitin Tetuakuth.
Yeah.
So this is the same, this is reiterated the same point of the
Right,
first source.
right, exactly. Next slide.
This is from the medieval empire of the Israelites.
This book is a lot of money. Okay?
As regards to the South American Indians and their possible relationship to the lost tribes of Israel, an article was published in the Israeli paper Mariv in December 1974 with the following content. In 1587, the Jesuit Nicholas Deltu was sent was sent to South America by the King of Spain for missionary purposes to convert the Indians to Christianity in Argentina. Nicholas discovered a people who bore Jewish names, namely Abraham, David, Moses, and so forth. To the question about whether they were circumcised, these people answered thus: yes, just like our ancestors. In the same region were found stone knives used for circumcision. Sharpened stone
Why
knives.
you asking niggas if they circumcised? Go ahead.
Right.
Are you circumcised? Kind of weird shit. Go ahead.
Sharpened stone knives are mentioned also in the Bible as special instruments for completion of the rite of circumcision. An Argentine tribe where a stone slab with 3 commandments was found causes no less interest. Do not steal, do not lie, do not kill.
Next slide. Now, on the right is the Fuente Magna Bowl, found in Bolivia with the form of cuneiform writing. Why is cuneiform writing in America? Anyway, there, read short.
So the source is a Star in the West, which is page 249, which says Acosta says that the clothes of South Americans are shaped like those of the ancient Jews, being a square little cloak over a little coat. In fact, in his description of South America, as well as Escar Bodis assures us that he often heard the South Americans repeat the word hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Next slide.
This is also from A Star in the West, which is page 111 through 112.
Very good book, by the way. You should buy it. Yeah?
The Indian informed him that one of their most ancient traditions was that a great while ago they had a common father who lived towards the rising of the sun and governed the whole world. That all the white people's heads were under his feet. That he had 12 sons by whom he administered his government. That his authority was derived from the Great Spirit by virtue of some special gift from him. That the 12 sons behaved very bad and tyrannized over the people, abusing their power to a great degree, and so as to offend the Great Spirit exceedingly. That he, being thus angry with them, suffered the white people to introduce spirituous liquors among them, made them drunk, stole the special gift of the Great Spirit from them, and by this means usurped the power over them.
Now, these are prophets saying this to the white man. This was happening. Prophets in South America saying this to the white man. Okay?
And ever since the Indians' heads were under the white people's feet. But that they also had a tradition that the time would come when the Indians would regain the gift of the Great Spirit.
Damn right.
From under the people, and with their ancient power, when the white heads would be again under the Indians' feet.
So the white man was going to be underneath the Indians' feet. That's the tradition. You can go back, huh? Prophecy, huh?
Yeah, go over to
you see that? You go to the next one. Now, the right is Hebrew petroglyphs in Puerto Rico. I will go more into detail with this in future classes. All right? Read that out.
The source is the Quible commentary of 1672 all the way to 2012. Anthropology in Virgin Islands music. Despite the dynamics in the African religions and the worship style of the Tainos, they both generally believed in spiritual component to human existence and a divine creator. It may be also interesting to find a linguistic connection between the Taino word Yakahu and Yahweh, or other terms for God in Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic. Considering the religious diversity among the African Virgin Islanders, the Bambula would have been especially meaningful as a venue for unity.
Next slide. Now you see on the right hand, it says at Tula Toltec capital. This is from the Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids by Peter Tompkins, page 351. This is a picture I took of my book. All right. It says at Tula, the Toltec capital, which is in Mexico. Issachar had a son named Tola. Anyway, at Tula, the Toltec capital, shoveling the rubbish from the remains of a house, Disraeli Carne found many curious, such as huge baked bricks, filters curved with water pipes, and what appears to be small Phoenician seals. What is ancient Paleo Hebrew called? Phoenician. Small Phoenician seals and a vase with bearded, robed mustache Tolak holding a bolt of lightning. You can read the source out.
The source is Relaxiones. Relaxiones Históricas. And his name is the Don Fernando de Alba.
Yeah, you go with it.
So it is found in the histories of the Toltecs that this age in First World, as they call it, lasted 16 years. That men were destroyed by tremendous rains and lightnings from the sky, and even all the land without the exception of anything. And the highest mountains were covered up and submerged in water. Translated to read 15 cubits concerning that word. And here they added other fables of how men came to multiply.
Now this is the customs that the native Indians, and they're telling their stories and their tribal traditions to the white man. Yeah.
And here they added other fables of how men came to multiply from the few who escaped from this destruction. And what that word means. That this word is talk to Lakole.
You did good, huh? Yeah.
That this word nearly signifies a closed chest, and how after men had multiplied, they erected a very high zukali, which is today a tower of great height, in order to take refuge in it.
So what is this talking about? This is talking about the Great Flood. Then after the Great Flood, the Tower of Babel. This is in their customs and traditions. Yeah?
In order to take refuge in it, that the second world age should be destroyed. Presently, their language were confused, and not being able to understand each other, they went to different parts of the earth.
Next source. Now you see her bag? I'm just saying. Yeah, read that.
The source is History of the American Indians by James Adair, page 214. The Indian native from Florida to Panama believed in one true, immortal, and invisible God reigning in heaven.
Next source. The source is American Anthropology. Yeah, you can read it.
American Anthropologist, 1994, volume 6, on page 154.
Yeah.
It says, it is in his comparative dictionary, however, that the author really exceeds all canons of true linguistic science. He discusses here about 900 words representing some 1,200 Semitic compounds, comparing American words selected at random, chiefly from 6 distinct languages, with supposed Hebrew-Aramaic equivalents. The utter futility of any such attempts to connect American with Asiatic languages will be seen from the following examples, which really need little comment. On page 22, he compares Ketsaranuk, Kayapanek Nasungi, with Aramaic Ayanuka, baby. He compares with the Kola Kori, Ketsukori, with Hebrew Saris, gold. The Taino Karibana, Buena, with the Hebrew Banian, building, which is house. These examples have I purposely chosen because there is a faint, of course, accidental similarity between some of the words. When, however, we compare the following, we see how far the author has wandered afield in his vain search for word similarities.
So you see that there was linguistic similarities between the Indians and the people in the Far East, all right, in the Levant. You could go to the next source. That's all it's going to keep saying. Yeah, read that there.
This is from Woodbury Lowry, the Spanish settlements within the present limits of the United States, from 1513 all the way to 1561. The first recorded European contact with the people of the Cherokee Nation was with the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. When de Soto landed in Florida with his soldiers in 1539, he brought with him Spanish mastiffs, chains, and iron collars for the acquisition and exportations of Indian slaves.
Of what?
Of Indian slaves.
Of Indian slaves. Go ahead.
Hundreds of men women, and children were captured by De Soto and transported to the coast for shipment to the Caribbean and to Spain. A Cherokee from Oklahoma remembered his father's tale of the Spanish slave trade, quoting, "At an early stage, the Spanish engaged in the slave trade on this continent, and in doing so kidnapped hundreds of thousands of the Indians from the Atlantic and Gulf Coast to work their mines in the West Indies.
And thou shalt go into Egypt again with ships." You understand that? Egypt is not a location. It's a condition. Next source. This is in 1958. Read that out.
Dear Mr. This is Tekakwitha Indian Mission Incorporated, Sisselton, South Dakota. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Seeley, thank you very kindly for your donation of $10 for my little Indians. Yours is the first invitation that was ever extended to one of our papuses to come and spend a vacation somewhere. We have a few little boys and girls who have no one at all interested, whether they live or die or come and go. I would send a little boy of 6 years or older, or a little girl, whatever you prefer. These Indian children are very little trouble, especially the one I have in mind. If you really mean it, I will see that till we get him ready. You may have him at any time you desire. I am not making any inquiries about you because it takes a good person to make an offer as you did. Please let me know. With kindest regards.
The devil. So this is in 1958. You understand that? On the right-hand side, back into the book, Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids by Peter Tompkins, page 350. Now, this is striking Semitic figures found throughout Mesoamerica. Now, if you look at that, you see the beards, you see the garments, you see the representation of bells around the garment, which is a Levitical practice, and you see upturned shoes, which all comes from ancient Assyria and also comes from Persia. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, read the source, huh?
So this is the same source, except it's page 348. It says, after considerable research, she traced the upturned shoes to either the Hittites or the successors and imitators, the Phoenicians, renowned as great seafarers who regularly wore long clinging double robes, turbans and ribbons, pointed beards, and upturned shoes. So impressive is the evidence accumulated by scholars to the effect that the Phoenicians reached the shores of both North and South America. It is hard to understand why it continues to be shunned.
Next. Now, this is the next section. You might have to read it off your phone. All right, this is Israelites and slavery. This is the last section. Okay?
This is Negro who can write Hebrew.
Huh?
I remember that.
He is deaf and dumb.
Remember this
and
is the last
comes-
one? Go ahead.
he
So
is-
this is a Negro that can write Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
he is deaf and dumb and comes from an African town. Hartford, Connecticut, September 19th.
Hope y'all listening.
A young African Negro has been in this city for the last few days who claims to be a Hebrew. He is deaf and dumb and as black as the ace of spades. He carries a pad of paper with him and answers all questions by writing them in Hebrew and Lashon Kodesh.
Lashawan Kwadash. Yeah, it's like, I do, you know.
What excites the most wonder is that he writes Lashon Kodesh very rapidly. It is a language of the books of Moses and is made a special study of, spoken and written with ease only by the rabbis and highly educated Hebrews. The Negro was sent to one of the rabbis of Hartford, who was perfectly satisfied that he is a Hebrew. He says that he came from a large town in Africa where there is a tribe of about 20,000 black Hebrews who speak Lashon Kodesh and are quite prosperous.
Lashawan Kwadash.
He also says that his father is a rabbi in that town, and that is why his father took the trouble to teach him to write these languages, which needed an extra amount of labor on account of his being deaf and dumb.
No, that's all. We got the point here, right? All right, next slide. Now, obviously, you see the bottom. Images of the transatlantic slave trade in the boats. You can read the top.
You have South Carolina. This is the source. South Carolina's Turkish People, A History and Ethnology by Terry Ann Ognebens, Glenn Browder on page 77. African slaves from regions of Islamic influence in the Old World, including some who were literate in their Arabic language and knowledgeable of the Quran and Bible.
Knowledgeable of what?
Of the Quran and Bible.
So they were already knowledgeable of the Quran and the Bible. Good.
Were imported and distributed throughout the southeastern colonies and states.
Next slide.
The source is Muslim Slaves by James W. Hagee, page 26. In 1786, two men appeared in Charleston, dressed in the Moorish habit, and aroused a great deal of suspicion by their strange ways. Therefore, an officer of the law began to try to question them. The Moors, he found, did not know English and resented the suspicious lawmen. According to an officer, the men became impertinent and vulgar. As a result, the lawman gave one of his fellows a little manual correction by way of reforming his manners. By this time, mob had gathered and the authorities feared a riot might break out. Finally, they determined that the two were of the Jewish nation. They then took the men to the home of a woman on East Bay Street who understood their language. She found out that the two had sailed from Algeria to Virginia, where they had been arrested on suspicion of their being Algerians, and they had traveled overland to South Carolina.
Two black men. Right here. That they were of what? Finally, they determined two were of the Jewish nation. Yeah, next slide.
One source is The Soul of Judaism. Jews of African descent in America by Bruce T. Haynes on page 124 all the way to 125. A number of factors contributed to the Negro's identification within ancient Israel. The majority of Africans in North America were brought from West African societies, which regularly practiced ritual circumcision, the ritual slaughter of animals, and the separation of women during menstruation. The next source is Creole New Orleans, Race and Americanization.
This book right here, you should buy it. Yeah.
By Arnold R. Hirsch and Joseph Logsdon. Between June 1719 and January 1731, 16 slave trading ships arrived in Louisiana from the Senegal region. 6 ships came from Judah, Wida, a slave trading post, between February 1726 and January 1731. 12 slave ships from Senegal landed 3,259 slaves at Belize at the mouth of the Mississippi River. During the same period, 1 ship from Judah landed 464 slaves at the same port. The African slaves brought to the Chesapeake during the 18th century came mainly from D. Bright, a Biafra, and were heavily Igbo.
And where were they going? New Orleans. So why is there such a what they call it, the Creole people with heavy witchcraft and voodoo? That also lines up with Haiti. Next slide. Now you see this, I just had it. That's the yoke of iron with bells used on slaves, man. Okay? Yeah, read that.
This is the sources from Black Jews, their religious challenge or politics versus religion, published by Cambridge University Press.
Cambridge University Press, yeah.
The following evidence was published in 1985. It confirms that the belief that Black people are Israelites is not new.
It's not new. Go ahead.
It has been around at least the last 119 years, and not just since the 1960s.
Not since One West started. Not since 1969. Go ahead.
And not just since the 1960s, as some people falsely teach.
Next slide.
The source is Nature Knows No Color Line by J.A. Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the Jews who were banished by Portugal by John II settled in the West Indies. John Bigelow, who visited Jamaica in 1850, saw the descendants of Jews and says they were Negroes.
Saw the descendants of the Jews in Jamaica and said they were Negro. Where was the main headquarters of pirates?
Kingston.
Kingston. Next source.
The next source is The History of Jamaica by Edward Long, page 459 and 1774. You Jews, said he, and our nation, meaning the Coromantans.
The Coromantans, who was brought to the Caribbean islands and the West Indies. What did he say?
Ought to consider ourselves as the same.
Next source.
Source is The Black Jews, the Religious Challenge or Politics versus Religion, page 235. The study of customs and rites and the analysis of the semantics of these African tribes have led many of the observers to propose some hypotheses and to even draw some conclusions. Dr. Alan H. Godbey reached the following conclusion. These factors have a very specific significance if we consider the presence of Judaism among the American Negroes. Hundreds of thousands of slaves were transported to America from West Africa during the trade which started some 400 years ago. What traces of Judaism is still remain among the Negroes of West Africa at that period? To the extent that they were persecuted, they were more likely than other Negroes to be seized during wars and sold as slaves. It is virtually certain that many part Jewish Negroes were among those sent as slaves to America.
Say that again.
It is visually certain.
It is virtually certain.
Virtually, Salaki.
Go ahead.
That many part Jewish Negroes.
Jewish Negroes. Go ahead.
Were among those sent as slaves to America.
Come on, man. Go ahead, Al. We almost done. Don't worry. Now, obviously, I gotta remind you. Look at all the people picking cotton, slaves. Okay.
Genealogy of Gwendolyn Ruth Hicks, book 1. The Gwen Schroeder Higdon, page 12. They soon found that the white southern slave owners were crueler than the British loyalists. Many white slave owners considered the dark-skinned Iberians dark enough to be sold as slaves.
The dark-skinned Iberians dark enough to be sold as slaves. Go ahead. Next slide.
The source is Atlantic Africa and the Spanish Caribbean between 1570 and 1640 by David Wheat on page 151. In Cartagena, the flow of Portuguese migrants apparently never abated during the early 17th century. A second slave trade surge lasting from the late 1610s to the first half of the 1620s brought even larger numbers of Portuguese and Luso-Africans to the city.
And hold on, what? And Luso-Africans to the city. Right. Go ahead.
The next source is the same source, but on page 161 all the way to 162. In settlements throughout the Spanish Caribbean, individuals described as Portuguese blacks or Afro-Portuguese Creoles worked alongside diasporic Africans as fellow slaves and free people of color.
Next slide.
The source is from Oluda
Equiano.
Interesting narrative of Oluda Equiano, page 19 through 21.
Now this man right here is another primary source that wrote his own biography, how he was in slavery, where he was captured from, where he went to, and who his people were. Go ahead.
Such is the imperfect sketch my memory has furnished me with of the manners and customs of the people among whom I first drew my breath. And here I cannot forbear suggesting what has long struck me forcibly, namely, the strong analogy which is even by this sketch, imperfect as it is, appears to prevail in the manners and customs of my countrymen and those of the Jews before they have reached the land of promise. For we had our circumcision, a rule I believe peculiar to that people. We had also our sacrifices and burnt offerings, our washings and purifications, on the same occasions as they had. As to the difference in color between the Igboan, which is the Igbo Africans, and the modern Jews.
Next slide. Yeah.
The Negroes and the Jews by Lenora E. Burson on page 212. The land of Israel is located on the Western Asian borders of North Africa. All of the native inhabitants of the region were non-white.
We're not white. Yeah.
When Spain expelled its Jews in 1499, many of them went to Africa. It seems probable that some of them were brought later to America as slaves.
As slaves. Yeah.
The Negro spirituals never sing of African rivers.
Go ahead.
It's always the Jordan
Uh-huh.
or the Red Sea.
Uh-huh.
They don't sing about African chiefs.
They don't sing about no Hamitic shit. Yeah.
It's David or Moses or some other Jewish characters from the Bible.
Okay, go ahead. Next source.
Black Jews, the religious challenge of or politics versus religion. The studies of the customs and the analysts of the Semitics of these African tribes have led many of their observers to propose some hypotheses and even to draw some conclusions. I think I read this one already.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does.
I read this one already.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to read the bottom half of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start from how many of them? How many of them would have been able to have been conserved some Jewish customs is another question. This conclusion put forward by Godby, which argues for the existence of a more or less recurrent Judaism in West Africa in the same places as those from which the Negroes were taken, is shared by others such as Maurice de la Fosse. But most significantly, it has been adopted by a class of educated Black Americans as a key argument to demonstrate that the Jewish religion is a traditional religion of Africans brought in slavery to the American continent. Nothing either confirms or repudiates this theory. In fact, we need to be very cautious in this instance. It is difficult to accept without some debate the thesis that these Black slaves in frequently insupportable material conditions in which they were forced to live were able to conserve, maintain and transmit a religion such as the Jewish religion. It is a commonplace that this religion in particular is subject to strict and well-defined rules of behavior and ritual.
Come on, man. We got one more slide, all right? One last one. Now, on the right is a Jewish revolt, an Israelite revolt, a slave revolt in Virginia. You understand that? A horrid massacre, tragical scene of them killing a bunch of damn crackers. All right? Read that source.
This is from the Black Jews of Africa, page 81 by Edith Bruder. The slaves believed themselves to be the oppressed Hebrews of the Bible and projected their own lives into the narrative of Israel's formative history.
Okay.
Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, and Nat Turner all took inspiration in the Bible.
All took inspiration of the Bible. They didn't look at a damn Ankh. They didn't pick up a Quran. They read the Bible and revolted, man. That's the last slide, Abaya. This is what they did. So do not ever let anybody tell you you ain't an Israelite. I went through plenty of sources and I got more. You understand? You already know I pray they understand. There's a lot of sources out there, and I could keep going. I gotta hold back some stuff because I'm doing the tribe breakdowns. So I gotta hold stuff back. All right? Read that, please, Bob.
Baruch chapter 2 and verse 30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people.
Mm-hmm.
But in the land of their captivity.
But in the what?
But in the land of their captivity.
But in the what?
But in the land of their captivity.
But in the land of their captivities. Yeah?
They shall remember themselves.
We're gonna remember ourselves, man. They couldn't stop me on Clubhouse when I was getting randomly muted and getting kicked out the room for some odd reason. They couldn't stop us when they stopped the goddamn live stream and had it paused for a while. You understand? Because in the land of our captivities, we shall bethink ourselves. You understand that? Take us out,
It's a Psalm, chapter 119, Samach. hate vain thoughts, but thy law do I love. Thou art my hiding place and my shield. I hope in thy word. Depart from me, ye evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. Uphold me according unto thy word, that I may live, and let me not be ashamed of my hope. Hold thou me up, and I shall be safe, and I will have respect unto thy statutes continually. Thou hast trodden down all them that err from thy statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth, like dross. Therefore I love thy testimonies. My flesh trembleth for fear of thee, and I am afraid of thy judgments. In the name of Yahweh, Hashem Yahweh Shai, the water from Yad, Aman.
Aman.
Amajim Shabbat. Amajim. Barak. Repeat after me. This is the real moral credence. We are to walk in the principles of the Holy Scriptures.
We are to walk in the principles of the Holy Scriptures.
And the fruit of the Spirit.
And the fruit of the Spirit.
To exercise and apply stern decorum.
To exercise and apply stern decorum.
And rectitude.
And rectitude.
That our faith may be found in the way of life.
That our faith may be found in our way of life.
We regard all men in our ranks.
We regard all men in our ranks.
We regard all men in the ranks of Christ.
We regard all men in the ranks of Christ.
We pray for mercy.
We pray for mercy.
We prepare for war.
We prepare for war.
This is the duty of all soldiers.
This is the duty of all soldiers.
Kwam Yashala.
Kwam Yashala. Kwam Yashala.